Good morning. Welcome in to Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla on this Super Bowl Monday. What's up, DB?
What up?
Oh, just trying to digest a big sports weekend, figure out what's going on.
Yeah, there's a lot.
There was a lot.
Little high school, little college, little NFL.
The last little bit of NFL that we get.
Yeah, what a
a stinker. Let's be honest, it was a stinker.
Yeah, I was really, really, really disappointed.
In just how the game went, Kansas City's effort, what?
So I think we got to be careful.
Okay.
There will be a lot of things made about what Kansas City didn't do,
As opposed to what Philadelphia did.
Yep.
I think that's fair.
Because I'm with a lot of the fans, and most of the Chiefs fans were not amazingly. The Chiefs fans that I conversed with yesterday, outside of one, was the Chiefs fans that I'm used to. Because I told you I didn't get the whole Chiefs fans on social media thing, because that's
how annoying they are.
That's not my experience with them.
Sure, yeah.
Not like.
Yeah, I've met a couple, but for the most part.
The last handful of weeks have been fairly eye opening. Last night it was pretty much back to
normal.
Yeah, one in particular I actually feel bad for, and I've got a ton of obviously friends, right? But I was my man St. Louis Jordan talked through almost the whole game.
Really?
Yeah. And I felt like that was a time to connect on a different level. I'm like, hey man, hang in there, because he's such a realist.
Yeah,
and he was the one guy of the. It's got to be 200 fans.
Yeah,
not friends, associates
that are Kansas City fans
that I know.
Yeah,
at least.
Sure,
at least. That was. Did not feel good going into this game. I don't think JB and KC felt good either.
It didn't seem like, and maybe again,
so those are the two outwardly were
yeah.
I don't know.
It seemed like there was some trepidation with Kansas City fans.
Yeah, did it? Okay.
At least the ones I know. They didn't seem overly confident to me. I don't think anybody thought it was going to go like that, but. I don't know. I didn't run into a lot of Kansas City fans that were talking trash or talking about three-peats or anything like that. It seemed like there was some hesitation. And if they had watched Philadelphia, I get it, right?
So I think when going back to the Kansas City thing, what they did or didn't do, you play in games like this at the end of the year for all the marbles, or in big games, or you coach in big games. Part of it is handling the moment.
Sure.
So you're not you'll never hit. Well, I'm not a big came out flat guy.
Sure.
Or I'm not a big trap game guy. I'm not.
Right. Yeah. We've had that.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Right. I don't. That's kind of.
Don't buy into that.
No.
Yeah.
I don't, because part of competing is handling the moment. But we never talk about it.
So rather than frame it as they came out flat, you're they didn't handle the moment.
You got to meet the moment.
Okay.
You got to meet the moment. You have to either embrace or combat, or
those things can look similar, but they're very different. Motives or roots.
Going for a three-peat and being the hunted, and having somebody say after the Texas game, well, this, that, and they went on. No, man, we didn't handle the moment.
Yeah.
Right? There were a lot of things that weren't in our favor, and we still had a chance. We didn't meet the moment.
Sure.
So I'm a big. That's part of it, right?
That's more like an internal.
100%.
Okay.
Because that's the beauty. That's the game, right? People talk about nerves and handling nerves and what goes into preparation. For as vilified as Sirianni was all year, and we made fun of him, and every week was a referendum on his job. The dude, he handled the moment. His team handled the moment.
And for a guy that hadn't been there before,
it was incredible.
It was a stark contrast to the team that you would have thought would be ready to handle the moment.
It was.
I think maybe that's the most disappointing thing about Kansas City, is it felt like Philadelphia met the moment in a way they weren't prepared to.
Yeah, so I'm curious to see. And Andy Reid was very introspective, right? Like not dismissive about like the actual results. It was more about the feelings and the disappointment. I
mean, this hasn't happened to him a lot. Not like that.
Not in his Kansas City days.
Yeah.
Right. But
even the Philly days, it didn't look like that usually.
So kind of what we saw last night is what he so quickly shook in Philadelphia.
Which part?
Didn't want to establish the run game.
Sure. Yeah.
Didn't meet kind of the moment. And this is pre getting to the Super Bowl because we brushed that aside because Philadelphia won so many games.
But they made several NFC Championship games before that and failed to make the Super Bowl.
And it was just interesting. I thought the most surprising thing was the game plans, in my opinion. Like, if you just want to boil it down to...
So Kansas City totally abandoning the run.
I could not believe how they decided to just come out slinging that thing.
Yeah.
I was shocked.
Like, is that you just?
I mean, and maybe it was just
it
was just because I spoke it in. I'm like, hey man, Kareem Hunt and ball control, and you got multiple guys that can run the ball, and you got Pacheco, and the intermediate passing. I tell you guys earlier, I'm like, you go to the quick game, go to quick game, just get the ball out of your hands.
Yeah, which that's the thing I didn't understand at all for Kansas City. Right? Clearly, you can't protect for whatever these long developing routes are, or the intermediate developing routes that you're trying to get done. Right? So what's the alternative there? You have basically three options if I'm not crazy, and maybe there's more, but you have run the ball.
Yeah.
Okay. You have screen game, and you have quick game, right? Get it out as quick as you can to the perimeter, screen game, or run the ball. Like those are kind of the three things you do against a pass rush you can't just block, right? Especially when they're only bringing 4. So that's the thing I never understood is why are they still kind of banging their head against that wall when it seemed pretty clear early they were not going to be able to protect.
Try to run the ball.
Yeah.
And if nothing else,
at least slow down the rush like half a step, right?
Yeah, because I felt like defensively they played like Kansas City played, especially in the first half.
Yeah.
I felt like they earned a better outcome.
I agree.
They had earned a much better outcome, but
you've got the pick 6, which adds on to the point total, and then the dam kind of breaks at a certain point.
Yeah.
But they were doing pretty well. They were holding up pretty well.
And the Eagles' biggest play was on a 50-50 ball that was a beautiful throw.
Yeah.
Right, AJ, that was great coverage by McDuffie.
100%.
So you just tip your cap, right? It's like, okay.
Yeah, you're not going to get too down about that.
Hang in there. But that was kind of my overarching thing. I hated Kansas City's game plan.
Yeah.
And I felt like that felt squarely on the coaching staff.
Which where we thought they had an advantage.
Yeah. We talked about it for weeks.
Yeah. They had an advantage over everybody there, right?
But the other thing that I think is interesting that we talked about, and it was just a feel, and again, maybe it's just one of those things I'm trying to speak into existence. I did not like the quick shifting anointing and the speculating on outcomes.
With the Mahomes and Brady thing?
And it just didn't sit well.
Can I?
I'm like, number one, I don't even believe it to be accurate.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Like, I mean, Brady's gonna be Brady. Let that
yeah.
So I didn't like that because I'm like, there's no way you guys are really doing this.
It's like let Jordan be Jordan over here.
Yeah.
Everybody else can do their own thing, and it can be great. But
Brady doesn't have to pass anything.
No,
and certainly not the torch.
No.
Right, and
maybe pass off that giant watch he's wearing and let the arms up a little bit.
That Joker was nice. But and I felt like this is different because I felt like he really, really struggled last night. But
yeah,
I didn't like that, and we didn't talk about the Eagles angle enough.
We barely talked about them at all. To be fair,
as Cynthia and some of the people we talked to now, so I'm like, there's another team playing. I think I said that to all three.
Yeah,
at some point, it's like, and maybe that's just personal because it's how I would feel. So I wanted to make it somebody else's thing, because somebody did counter back with, well, around here in my sphere of influence, most of my guys like the Phillies. Who was that? Who did we speak to last? It wasn't Cynthia. It was after that.
It was.
Was it our Philly
Frank?
guy?
Was it Martin Frank?
Might have been. He's like, well, a lot of my guys like Philly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, and it was, I mean, that's kind of the coach in you, right? Where you don't want all, like if you're West Side 2 years ago where you guys are running through everybody, you don't want it to be, oh, this coronation, this anointing. It's like, hey, there's still another game to play. There's still another team. Yeah. Like, we still have to go out and execute.
And you have to fight that.
Right.
And people, you guys would roll your
Especially
eyes
internally.
at me. You'd be like, oh, come on, man.
Well, yeah, because I can afford to.
And I'm like, nah, man, we got to stay on the gas.
Yeah. Like, I can afford to roll my eyes because I'm looking at 30,000 foot. You're in there in the day-to-day trying to get, Christian Jones or Bo Ryan or whoever else to, like, lock in and be like, hey, I need you to get your assignments down here, right? Like, it's a different – my role and your role, they're very different. But I do – like, I agree that was a weird shifting in the narrative last week with the Mahomes into the Brady
it was just
and
too
whatever.
Fast.
But can I also agree, or can I also say that I think this morning's headlines about, the dynasty vanquishers and things like that, it's like they still won 3 out of 4. Like, you know what I mean? Like, can both those things be true?
Yeah, that's good. That's funny because I think, but that's what we do though.
It is.
We build this thing up, and it's not the Chiefs. It wasn't the Chiefs saying this.
No, it's everybody else.
It's everybody else.
But it's like
so then they'll be the first ones to say, "Oh, so much for the Don't put that on them."
But they've been to 5 Super Bowls in 7 years. Like, it feels pretty dynasty still. Like
that's and I don't think they'll. Now they got some things they have to.
Yeah, they got to get some work done.
But they're not going in as long as.
Well, they still have that
still the quarterback,
and they still have that super young roster.
You're gonna be fine, but I felt
Reed
like
said he's coming back next year. So
the line, it just gave out on them.
Yeah, there was, and the play calling didn't do him any favors either.
No.
Also,
and there are all these funny jokes. I didn't really think it was funny because I've gotten my teeth kicked in a fair amount, so it's like. I don't know if I'd make light of that.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was the whole, well, this is what would happen if Mahomes played for the Bears or.
Oh, yeah.
So it was stuff like that. But I'm like, I have to stop saying like, I'm thinking to myself, it's not necessarily an indictment on Mahomes because he's a victim of his own benchmark.
Sure. Yeah.
So as long as that's the case, I'm cool with. I'm not killing Mahomes. He clearly didn't play well.
Yeah, like he definitely did not meet his standard.
But he didn't get any help early either.
No. There's a couple big drops.
I would have started with O-line.
Yeah, and then
or game plan.
Yeah.
1, 2, and then maybe you get to Mahomes.
Yeah. After the drops, before the drops.
So the first one to Kelsey, I don't think was a drop.
It was behind him. I didn't think that was a good throw.
It was not a good throw. Do I think Kelsey should have caught it? I couldn't tell how hard Mahomes threw it.
I couldn't either. They didn't give a good replay on it.
Well, we didn't get any, I don't think.
Yeah. So,
and then the one coming out of the end zone on the next drive where he threw like a 90-mile-an-hour heater, I was like, oh, this dude's nervous.
Yeah.
Because he threw that thing super hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would call those.
But the Hopkins one was brutal.
Yeah, and that's D-Hop.
Yeah, that one's brutal.
And I wonder if that would have broken the kind of the run.
It seemed like it might have because he had some running room too. That was going to be a big play.
Yeah.
What it looked like happened to me is he started to trip right before.
Yeah.
Like he caught his foot.
Yeah, it dragged.
And then it almost seemed like he looked down to try and catch his feet, and then the ball was on top of him. Yeah. And so that's just really unfortunate, and it's especially a guy that never drops the ball. Made a much more difficult catch in the end zone in the corner at the very end. Mm-hmm. But that's the one that I go back to and I go, that one maybe had the chance to get it back for him. And maybe it doesn't, because the line still wasn't going to be able to protect and whatever. There were still all these other things. But that one did sort of feel, and it's silly to say in a game where they were down 34-0, it felt like it could have broke the momentum up just enough.
I was like, and I'm thinking to myself, watching these guys, like the run game and the way that Philly's run game and what they were trying to do, a lot of eye candy. Mm-hmm. Right? Pin, pull. They would false pull. Like, they were really trying to mess with Kansas City.
So what does a false pull look like? They act like they're going to,
So you run away from the pull.
Okay. So they actually do pull, but you run away from it. Okay.
So they ran read. They ran zone read and pulled away from it. Mm-hmm. So, like, if you have linebackers, like we would, a lot of times we read guards. Mm-hmm. And it's like we're going to be slow to get to that alley. If they go back away from the guard, that's where our safety's got to be able to get down into the box and buy us some time to get back, right? And, Chiefs were making a couple good open field tackles early, and I was like, oh, gosh, I like this. Yeah. I kind of like this cat
and they did great on Barkley the whole game. They really did.
I like this kind of cat and mouse thing.
Yeah.
And they just didn't buy themselves. When you only had 16 plays with like 5 minutes to go in the second quarter, I was like, I don't know.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, I don't know.
But if you had told me that they were going to hold Barkley to what they did, I'd say, Kansas City wins that game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 9 times out of 10, I feel good about that. 2.3 yards per carry. Longest rush was 10 yards.
I never thought he was going to be the guy, though.
No, I thought he'd break one, though.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was going to be, because we talked about this last week, right?
It's such a good tackling secondary in Kansas City.
I didn't think it would be the, salt the game away, 6-7 yards at a time, the way we thought Philadelphia probably needed to, although we did see Hurts sort of turn into that. But I thought he would break at least one. I thought we'd see a vintage Saquon run at some point, and they did an incredible job on that. But everything else, and Hurts was really good. I'm not going to pretend like he wasn't. But it didn't seem like he killed them early. He made enough plays, right? But that's the one where it felt way more as if the Eagles defense was killing Kansas City than the Eagles offense was really putting the gas pedal down, if that makes any sense. It felt like a slow bleed early. And then the pick six sort of dumped things over the edge.
I like, and the only reason I picked, there's 2 reasons why I picked the Eagles. One was just the physicality up front.
Mm-hmm.
I did not think it was going to manifest itself like that.
Yeah.
I just felt like they're better up front. They have good enough skill, they'll win.
On really both sides of the trenches, right?
But the other thing that I liked was I like the Eagles' ability to play on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
I like their linebacking core, even without Dean.
Yeah.
Which is
pretty significant.
Unheard of.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, Bond showed up, but they could play nickel. They could not play nickel. They didn't even really have to play Trotter Jr. Their versatility.
Mm-hmm.
Fangio is, and I get it, he may not get a ton of credit just because the front four did what they did. So it's like, oh, well, how intricate do you have to be? I still think, the pre-snap movements and stuff was a problem for Mahomes because he wouldn't get rid of the ball.
Yeah, it didn't seem like he saw it well.
Yeah, and I think that was a thing, and nobody's really, it's not really a thing. I just think, pressure. I think what happens behind the pressure with just 4 is just as important as getting pressure, and he just was not seeing it clean forever.
It felt early, and maybe I'm doing revisionist history here. It felt early like he was holding on to the ball for too long.
I'm with you.
That's
why I'm like, quick game.
And feel a little weird saying that about Mahomes because he is who he is. But it seemed like he was either
You know what it could have been?
What's that?
He could have had that secondary for Philly is pretty good. He could have had a pretty fair amount of respect for him because he wasn't cutting it loose, taking chances like he normally does either.
No, he seemed a little hesitant to let a few
because those guys, that back end goes to get it
because they dialed up a couple, and you could tell he was about to let it go, and then just didn't, ends up dumping it off or scrambling out or whatever.
Because even the pick that Cook got and I'm going back to the Chiefs.
Yeah,
even Cook's pick.
Yeah,
people. I'm gonna stay off the Brady thing. It wasn't the throw based on what Hurts saw. I felt like was legit. Look where Cook came from to make that play. The ball was underthrown.
Yeah,
but I think he thought Brown could come back and get a 50-50 ball. The play Cook made was incredible.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, a lot of times in games like that where you have secondaries that can go get it like that, quarterbacks aren't as
a little more cautious,
willing to grip and rip that thing.
Well, especially after, I don't know if it was.
It's a great catch by Cook too, by
the first ball. I think it was on the first or second drive that Kansas City had, where Mahomes scrambles out to the right and throws it on the run, and I think he thought he had enough time to get the ball there, and it almost got picked.
Yeah.
I wonder if that sort of stuck in his head a little bit because he didn't seem to think like that guy was going to make a break on the ball. And I didn't even think he was that far away. But you do wonder if that starts to play in his mind a little bit about
Shane. He's talking to himself. You don't have to highlight that guy. He's talking to himself. He's the king of the straw man argument. Nobody's arguing with you. Nobody's arguing with you, game dog. Okay, beat your chest. Hey, you weren't the only one that picked the Chiefs or the Eagles. Shemini Christmas. Give it a rest.
But I do wonder if one of those early throws sort of played in his mind a little bit about what was open and what wasn't compared to what he normally sees.
All right, the one of the things that I wanted to see, and maybe that's why I was talking about like Hunt and Pacheco and those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Andy Reid has a thing where he can get really creative with the run game.
Yeah.
He kind of has like this little trap action, and he can like play against your aggressiveness. Mm-hmm. We didn't see any of that.
No.
And I wonder, clearly he'd probably have a lot of do-overs, but it just got away from him early, and then you just let dogs hunt.
Yeah.
I mean, they got a ton of yard dogs, and they guarded the yard.
Well, especially
they're all mean, active.
Yeah.
And they said it, the post-game, pre-game, like they were pissed, and I get it, to the victor goes the spoil, so you can say, hey, we were motivated by the three-peat talk. But they at least outwardly look like they embraced the moment.
Yeah, I mean, they handled their business without a doubt. I also do wonder, it seemed like last year where Kansas City didn't trust their receivers that much, that they were a lot more willing to go to Pacheco and go to sort of these creative run game elements and things like that. I wonder if they sort of just fell back into bad habits with, we've got D-Hop and we feel pretty good about Worthy, and, we like Hollywood Brown, and we still have Kelsey. Like, maybe they sort of fell into some bad habits because they over-trusted their receivers after kind of realizing what they didn't have last year.
I thought last night was way more about the Eagles than what it was that Kansas City didn't do. And Kansas City, I can fully say, listen, it's uncharacteristic, but sometimes people make you play like that.
For sure. And at the end of the day, Kansas City could have brought their A game, which they didn't, and they still might have lost that thing. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar exterior stage. Much like Cooper DeJean has had his eyes focused and straight ahead trying to get to the end zone, that's how you need to be on the road this morning as well. Make sure you're focused. That is your job as the driver. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. There was a moment yesterday after the Cooper DeJean pick six where it looked like your prediction of defensive MVP, specifically Cooper DeJean, might come true. I think the rest of the Eagles defense kind of screwed you, though. Like, the rest of them were too good. You couldn't pick a Eagles defender.
Yeah.
Because you had Sweat had 2.5 sacks. Who had the strip sack forced fumble?
Was it Davis?
Yeah.
Carter?
Davis. Carter was really good. DeJean had the pick six. Bond was really good, had another pick. Like, there were too many good Eagles defenders. Like, you couldn't just pick one.
Even like if I had it, and I did, I still wouldn't have picked a D lineman. And it sounds dumb.
Yeah.
It's like,
because that's the unit you probably like the best.
Yeah, and I didn't know who it was going to be.
Right. Because everybody sort of thought Jalen Carter.
I just went with somebody I thought was going to make plays on the back end. And the whole Kelsey Bond thing was interesting to me.
Yeah.
But that didn't really come to fruition. I don't know. Listen, he's been so good for so long. I don't know, like, if I don't want to say something was wrong with him.
Kelsey?
He
didn't seem quite right.
Mm-mm.
It did seem like some of the guys on Kansas City were a little tight. It seems like Mahomes, I'll go from Andy Reid and the game plan.
The secondary was spectacular early, though.
They were. I mean, offensively mostly. Offensively, seemed like Mahomes was a little tight. Maybe he wasn't making great decisions, holding on to the ball for too long. Seemed like he was spinning out of stuff too early, too. After the first couple pressures, it seemed like he felt, not ghosts really, because they were there, but it was a little early. Normally, he'll kind of stand in there and deliver a ball. Maybe he wasn't liking what he was seeing, so he bailed early. But it seemed like he was not feeling great. Kelsey obviously didn't play great early either. It was sort of a strange dynamic on the Kansas City offense. Now, like you said, really good defenses will make you look really bad. right? So maybe that's all it was. But you do wonder with all the three-peat talk and stuff like that, maybe they didn't meet the moment. Because that's a different moment than just going to another Super Bowl, right? Going for, hey, nobody in the history of the game has done this before. That's a different thing. Going for a third straight.
Kobe's right. It was Milton Williams.
Williams, that's right.
That's when got me to say deep on the D-line. I was like, those guys go deep.
Yes.
How would they play, 7?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right.
And
which makes the pressure even harder to deal with.
I mean, Chiefs could barely find 5 healthy offensive linemen.
What were they doing with Thune?
Thune, he's playing out of position, number 1.
Yeah.
He needs to be inside.
So that's what I'm kind of wondering, right? Because, okay, you don't feel great at left tackle. So you're going to compromise 2 positions to try and...
It was weird.
We see that a lot. I mean, not a lot on the offensive line always. But this analogy was used to me with wide receivers before.
And they're really creative in the run game.
That's odd.
I just wanted to see the Eagles, like the D-line, get tested.
Yeah.
Because I like the cat and mouse stuff.
Yeah.
And clearly, I picked the Eagles to win, so I think they're going to win. But I want to see, like, the back and forth.
Yeah, the chess match, right? The move, counter move, the whole thing. There wasn't a lot of that.
This is going to be a long night.
Yeah.
They just were when you can shorten the corner like they can on a pass rush, and a quarterback has to step up, but he's stepping up into a mess. Creed Humphrey struggled, and he's amazing.
Yeah, usually really, really good. So maybe that's why Mahomes was spinning out early. He knew if he waited too long, you wouldn't have anywhere to step up. So he was trying to spin out around the edge before they got past him. I don't know.
It's the first time in a long time where I've seen Creed's strength actually matter. No, because a lot of times he's such a good technician. He's fine.
Yeah. But he just wasn't strong enough to hold up.
It really, really struggled with strength.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big physical front.
Yeah. A lot of ex-Georgia guys over there.
Well, they're so good with their hands.
Yeah.
It's a wonder that they should probably get, I don't know, 2 or 3 or 4 hands to the faces every time out.
Probably.
Because they strike. And I mean,
yeah. I mean, they're jabbing.
Yeah, they shock you. They're really good with their hands. D-line coach does a good job.
Yeah.
Whomever that is.
Yeah. No, it was an unbelievable effort for them. I do wonder. Yeah, I do just wonder about the defense in general. Like I don't know if there was something like Kansas City quick game. We've talked about that a lot, right? Like, I don't know if they could have gone to that earlier. I would think so.
Where were all those crafty screens and stuff?
Well, and then we saw late.
Although the early one they sniffed out, maybe they were discouraged.
I know, but don't you kind of have to stay with it?
I mean, that's how I feel about the run game. When Kobe says that we couldn't run the ball, you have to try.
Right.
Like, you can't just,
you can't just throw your hands in the air. Oh, well.
You have to.
I guess we're just going to go bombs away.
You have to give yourself a chance.
But it was weird, and I know score and it's like time and score dictate how a lot of these things go, right? But I think it was their second touchdown drive where all of a sudden Mahomes is quick out to Worthy and then quick out to Hopkins. And like these little 4, 5, 6 yards, basically extensions of the running game through the passing game. And they got him all the way down the field, just boom, 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 boom. And then they had a crack. And maybe that wouldn't have worked earlier. Maybe the Eagles were a little bit, a little bit more conservative, weren't quite as fired up because it's 40-6 or whatever. But we didn't even see him try that early. That's the weird part.
There's a handful. I think they're one of the top 5 screen teams in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I just the game plan was the great big takeaway.
Yeah.
Because some of the other stuff is obvious, right? You knew about Philly's front 4. Mm-hmm. You knew about the number 1 ranked defense.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was the
what's the counter move?
The counter move.
Yeah. And
that's what I kept waiting to see.
It was also
I'm not going to kid you. I thought there was going to be a return too that may have been a little bit more impactful
for Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you saw him try in the kickoff game a little bit and weren't really able to get it going.
Like, ooh, if that thing is close, like their return game is quietly pretty good.
Yeah.
But then DeJean got the first one.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
He's nice, man.
It was
that dude is nice.
I do just kind of wonder because it's not like Philadelphia went 21-0 in the blink of an eye, right?
Yeah.
It was, like I said earlier, sort of a slow bleed. Generally, when that's the case, you don't see people throw away the script that early, right? And I don't, maybe this just was the script and we don't like it.
You know what I think it is?
What?
You know what I think it is? So I think most people felt, you heard this for almost 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Eagles had the better team. Kansas City had the better quarterback, better coaching staff, better pedigree.
Mm-hmm.
You know what we saw play out? The better team won.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe you just don't overthink it.
Yeah, that's fair. I would have liked to see Kansas City throw a better punch.
Do more Kansas City things.
That's the thing that I think is going to bother.
And maybe that's why Chiefs fans are not okay, but
yeah,
like cool, because that when you lose in a game like that, I don't know how many times you're going to play that game, and it's going to be
Kansas City's going to come out like that.
A win.
Yeah,
you could probably play it closer, but win.
Do you feel? I mean, you think Kansas City fans feel better being able to tell themselves just, oh, that wasn't our best effort?
I don't know if they feel like that.
Okay,
I don't know.
Yeah, because I do wonder.
You know what I think it is? This is safe. I think Kansas City fans wonder, what if we would have done this?
Yeah, sure.
And not play by play. I'm not saying what if we would have caught this ball or what if we didn't get this call. It's what if we would have tried this more? I think that's probably generally how Kansas City fans
That's fair, because I do think it feels different.
Because in a game like that, it's certainly not about a player two.
No, it's about a philosophy or a strategy, or just, like you said, the better team ends up winning. But I do wonder if Kansas City had played their absolute best and they still lose, let's say, by 2 touchdowns at the end where Philadelphia just pulls away, I think they might feel worse in that scenario.
Yeah.
Like if you feel like you gave it their best shot and, oh, no, they're just better, that's a tough pill to swallow.
I hate to do we'll come back to it. It's interesting on the coaching and the dynasty thing and how quick we were to elevate. These are just things that we talked about.
Yeah.
This isn't like post the game. Some awful quick narratives were going to change had they won. I don't know, man. I think we better give more credit to the Patriots. That's all I know.
They changed just as quick the other way this morning as well on those narratives. We'll be back. More Hurrdat Sports Radio. Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DBM Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. Hopefully you got in here and got those wings yesterday.
I did.
Our guy got his wings. They were 75 cents for the Super Bowl. I know they ordered a ton extra.
I couldn't believe it.
How they're good?
Even with the $1 upcharge.
Yeah. Oh, because you like them special?
Breaded.
Yeah.
Didn't those look legit?
They look super good. How'd they travel?
And their they're only going like 4 minutes.
I know, but still, they're just different, right? Like
it's
live
good point.
versus.
Good point.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the allure.
Because the packaging is.
I wanted to keep it.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't attached, right, I would keep those.
So you could clean them and you reuse them.
Yeah, but the top just flips.
Yeah. This sounds weird. There's certain restaurants I will go back to because I like their to-go container so much.
There's
a couple places where I will.
We're probably talking about a few of the same places. I have those. Do they have a black bottom and a clear top?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have those. Probably 4 of them.
Yeah.
One's a round one.
Oh, really?
Which is, you could put if you cut up fruit and you want to travel and
that's nice.
Oh man,
I like the places with really good to-go containers.
So
it will bring me back.
It's very sturdy.
Yes. Yeah, not the flimsy ones.
And they were sensational. I got the sauce on the side. I know a lot of people were like, "Man, DB, those sauces need wings," and I was like, I dip them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem dipping, especially again if you're traveling with them. If you're not eating them in house, keeping the sauce separate can keep some of the freshness.
It was the most boring ho hum meal ever.
Yeah.
I had like 4 pieces of unthawed bacon. I cut them into thirds. I smoked 12.
Wait, unthawed bacon? You ate bacon frozen?
No, I'm saying I only had 4 strips of bacon thawed. That's what I should have said.
Okay. I thought you were just
So I didn't want to get any out of the fridge.
I thought you were just taking bacon out of the freezer and eating it like a popsicle.
No. That'd be something. And so I cut it into thirds.
Okay.
And that only covered 12 little Smokies.
Yeah.
So I put 12. Couldn't feed Zoe. 12 little Smokies on the smoker. I melted some cheese in the oven for homemade Cheez-Its.
Oh, yeah.
And ate the wings.
Yeah. I was pretty traditional.
Super boring.
My parents came over, so they watched the game.
Did I leave yesterday?
You like the house?
I wasn't in my car yesterday more than 14 minutes.
Did you come get the wings, or you send somebody else?
No, I did.
Okay. So that was it?
Yeah.
The round trip?
Oh, I got ice.
Okay. Well, yeah, gotta get ice.
Our ice maker, man. I don't know. But it's very basic.
Yeah.
And so today I may shoot my shot with the one last normal day to get outside and cook.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty cold today still.
I gotta use up a brisket.
Yeah.
Yeah. The vacuum seal is getting a little loose.
A little loosey goosey.
Yeah. I ain't letting any freezer remnants get on this bad boy.
You gotta be careful there. Kind of like Nebraska was a little loosey goosey in their press break last night.
Hey, but
if they threw one more blind jump pass,
Can I say one more thing about the Chiefs before we get into this? Yeah, that's fine. So I'm with Josh. I'm vibing. And again, this is somebody that picked the Eagles, but wants to see, like, without a real vested interest, I want to see a good game.
Yeah.
Right? Game within a game. Mahomes said something to Aaron Andrews I thought was interesting.
This was the pregame comment you were talking about? Okay.
She asked him about, the Super Bowl and the three-peat, and he said the key. He said, one of the things that I want to do is, he said, I want to get off to a quicker start than we have before in the past. I want to get off to a good start.
Yeah.
And I was like, didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay, they've been behind double digits before 2 of the Super Bowls. But when they came out slinging and they won all year, controlling the rock.
Yeah. Last 2 years, really. I mean, really, the last 2 years.
And last night, inexplicably, they don't want to control the ball.
Yeah, I just want to air it out.
So I wonder if there was this overthinking.
Yeah, hey, we have to get to a fast start, strike quick, maybe press things a little bit, as opposed to being patient, letting the game come to them. Yeah, that's possible.
It's just, again, maybe I'm just looking for an explanation.
Yeah.
And I'm reading too much into but that was his first answer. And I don't even like pregames, although I am happy. I'm very, very happy. I watched Lady Gaga.
The Lady Gaga deal down Bourbon Street.
That was incredible.
Yeah, that was super cool.
That was unbelievable.
I don't think they do a lot right in these 8-hour pregames, but they nailed that.
And how does New Orleans? So are they the only? Let me just ask you. Do you guys ever remember another Super Bowl host site that gets more of the city flavor than when it's in New Orleans?
No, never. No. New Orleans is its own thing. It really is.
So I wonder if part of the agreement is when they host the Super Bowl is, hey, you're going to get our history.
Yeah, maybe. Because, tourism is the main economy in New Orleans, right? Probably some fishing and stuff in the Gulf.
Yeah.
Fishing, seafood, all that kind of stuff.
I got some redfish from a buddy that was down in the Gulf.
But a lot,
freshly packaged.
A lot of what New Orleans does is the tourism and the history and the cultural aspects, right? But so I wonder if that's just, maybe it is part of the deal where they go, hey, you're going to come to New Orleans. That's great. We love you.
We're going to accentuate our city.
We're going to give you New Orleans, right? Because, you're not doing that when you go to Indianapolis, right? You're not doing that when you go to Miami or San Diego, which.
Did Detroit get a Detroit vibe?
Not to this extent, I don't think. I think they did a little bit of the revitalization of Detroit thing.
Yeah, I kind of do remember that. And
Detroit's back.
It could just because it was the Steelers.
Right. But I do remember sort of a, hey, Detroit's on the come up type of vibe to it. But it wasn't
I left that thing thinking, all right, it was as a New Orleans thing.
Yeah.
Even with the Kendrick Lamar performance, and there's been some what's the word I'm looking for? We've had Scott Stapp swinging from.
That was on Thanksgiving. How dare you?
Okay. So we've had some Super Bowl performances that weren't what we felt like were all encompassing, right?
Sure.
Why did this one draw so much pushback? It's not like this is the first time we've had artists where we didn't get a ton of crossover.
Sure. In terms of their audience.
Yeah. I didn't love that. But what I was going to say with even Kendrick Lamar was it was a lot of the stuff that, unfortunately, we'll just remember Serena Williams and, ooh, she used to date Drake and the diss track.
Yeah.
We won't understand, like, the Uncle Sammy and the Red, White, and Blue and the references to Gil Scott-Heron.
Yeah.
Jazz. Gil Scott-Heron, poet, jazz guy. I know, I get it. I think he's from New York. But had established some roots in New Orleans. I'm like, everything about a Super Bowl site in New Orleans feels like New Orleans. I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, I don't either. And maybe they're the only ones that are intentional enough to do it.
How about the pictures that the first responders were holding?
Yeah.
Then you're like going to go play a game?
Right.
You know me, too. I'm sensitive when it comes to people. I need a minute.
Yeah.
But I got up. I paced a little bit. I walked.
And they switch gears pretty fast.
And it's just like for a show, right? Sometimes when I'm not like vibing, I'm like, oh, I gotta get my game face right.
Yeah.
Right. And this could be at 6:56.
Right. Kind of got to shake yourself.
So
out of it.
I just need. You gotta give me a moment over that.
Yeah.
It was pretty powerful.
There was. It did feel very emotional.
Because what hasn't that city been through?
Well, Katrina's 20 years this year, right?
Still feeling the effects.
Oh, yeah. That's not – everybody else forgets about it, right? Although, the one thing – and I thought it was a beautiful tribute and everything, the Lady Gaga down Bourbon Street, the whole thing, right? I do feel like sometimes we give the tribute and then we move on. And it's like, hey, there's more help that needs done, right? You mentioned Katrina being 20 years later and they're still feeling the effects, right? They're going to be feeling the effects of the wildfires in California – we
still haven't fixed North Carolina.
Yeah, so. We still haven't fixed North Carolina. It's going to be a decade at least trying to fix L.A. And, we have these tributes and these memorials or whatever, and then the rest of us just move on. I don't know what there is to do. I don't know what I can do, but it does feel – I feel bad that in those moments that I'm seeing these tributes, I don't want to say I get jaded, but I go, okay – is that the last thing we're going to do for him?
Yeah, so I guess I get that. But my takeaway was, like, in the moment, now that you say that, I feel like, hold firm.
I like that they do it. I really do.
I felt like, gosh, that's a tough city.
It is. Yeah, it is.
That was my number one.
New Orleans is resilient.
That's a tough city.
100%. And I totally respect that. And, I like the tributes. I just don't want the tribute to be the last thing.
By the way,
when they panned the camera back to Lady Gaga and she was her normal self, were you like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah, a little bit.
To
Marilyn Manson vibes.
To circle it all back to what you originally was talking about with Patrick Mahomes and the interview, I thought he could have handled it a little bit better, but
post or pre?
The one to sit down, because that was a tough interview. I mean, how do you answer those questions? Because he's like greatness. That was
the quick anointing is. It's gonna be that was my takeaway.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, it could. I'm willing to admit it's just because I spent 8 days talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like the quick. You're sitting right next to me.
Yeah.
I'm like, really? We're just skipping a decade? Or only 2 years have happened. What?
Yeah, we're skipping 4 Super Bowls is what we're doing, right?
It was just so maybe that's it, Shane, that it was crammed down his throat and it was awkward. He clearly is not a guy that's not his style.
Awkward. No, he doesn't want to talk about that.
And I like him. That's why I like him.
I do too. Coming up next, we're going to talk to Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. We'll get into a lot going on here locally on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centris Federal Credit Union. That's DB. I'm Ravi. Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We'll be joined shortly by Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. And then at 9 o'clock, we'll get back into some NFL talk with Jason Cole. He's a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector and an author of 8 books regarding the NFL. But I do want to get into Nebraska basketball here for a second. Wins their 4th game in a row. I tongue-in-cheek kind of made fun of some of their blind over-the-head jump passes. But that was, especially considering how the first half went, I thought a pretty good effort for them to get that win.
It was really, really good.
And Bryce Williams again.
And when's the last time you've been able to talk about Nebraska basketball and just say things like they got wins that they needed?
I don't know. Let's ask our friend Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Sam McKewon, how are things? Give me the weather report.
I cannot say much about it. I haven't really been out there.
Okay.
So
All right. Well,
I think it's winter. And we might get a snow day this week. That's what I think.
So
breaking news: it's winter.
Yeah, that was great.
That's all I got, though.
It's very great.
I have limited insight this morning into the atmosphere.
So do you know how I know it's going to snow? Because every other time I ask you about the weather, I get some nice little forecast and an opinion. This time it's winter, so I'm like, oh shoot, it's out of character.
Oh yeah.
So it's snow.
It's coming.
It's gonna be 2 for 2.
That feels like the Sam McKewon equivalent of it's gonna rain. It's winter.
Snow days in Lincoln are easier to come by than snow days in Omaha. I'm just gonna tell you, Sam.
That's probably true.
It's.
I don't think Lincoln's had one. I think we've had maybe one all year. So
we had a cold day.
I think we've stored up for one. Yeah, I think we're.
School's put it. It's built into the budget. You might as well use it. I'll always trade for budgeted items.
That's right.
You know?
Right. You don't want to. Yeah, that's right. You want to. Yep. We'll see what happens. I have a sense though.
Do you want to start with the Super Bowl or Nebraska basketball?
Either one. The Super Bowl was pretty cut and dry. So
okay. Let me ask you one thing about the Super Bowl. Were you taken aback, surprised? Not at all. Just how it goes. Wouldn't have mattered what they did. That you didn't see the ball control, crafty run game, screen Chiefs last night.
Well, I mean, I think I was a little taken by surprise at just how ineffective the Chiefs were on offense. I mean, I don't think anybody would have necessarily expected, that performance. I thought it was a shockingly bad performance by the offense, and I appreciate Patrick Mahomes taking, the lion's share of the blame for that, but I don't know that it was all on him. I mean, I think he certainly made a couple mistakes, but the offensive line didn't appear to be, ready to rock and roll. I mean, they got shoved around. It wasn't, I mean, there's times when guys get around you in the scheme or whatever, but a lot of the circumstances where the Chiefs were struggling is just, Josh Sweat pushing someone back into Mahomes. So maybe they could have had a screen game. I didn't feel like they tried to run the ball very much, but at the same time, it's not like the Eagles were. I think they probably would have slowed the run down too, but they only had 4 men up there. It wasn't necessarily a bunch of blitz packages that got home. It was 4-man pass rush coverage behind it. Probably need to run the football. Probably do. But we've seen defenses like the Seahawks under Carroll and other teams that have been able to find a way to coax teams to keep throwing the football, even though running the football would be a better idea. And for whatever reason, they just, the Chiefs just didn't get untracked last night. And, you give Philly enough time to get its offense going, they will, and they did. So, but I kind of wrote on Twitter, I think this game might have been coming. They probably needed a game like the Raiders last year that woke them up, and they didn't get that wake-up game this year. They kept finding ways to win games, just unbelievable ways to win games, and I think their luck ran out. And once they got behind by 14 or 17, they just didn't have the magic to pull it out.
Sam, switch gears to Nebraska basketball here as DB asked me a great question right before you came on the air here, and it was, when's the last time you can remember Nebraska consistently going out and just winning games that they absolutely needed to win?
Well, not very often. And one thing I've tried to talk about is that what was has to just kind of be put away. Like you got to put it away, and you got to focus going forward on what's possible. and Nebraska basketball is no longer funded like, a program that's an afterthought. And I can remember, and all the people, there's people who cover the team still that can remember what that was like. It's not like that anymore. So there's really no reason. And I know I referenced it in my rewind today that it's been 31 years since they've been to back-to-back NCAA tournaments. But it's just time to move forward. And for what it's worth, I think Fred Hoiberg's ready to do that. Like, he's not caught up in the past. And so I thought the 6-game losing streak was not an anomaly because it's 6 games, but like, that was not good. That wasn't like, well, that's what Nebraska does. I'm like, no, this isn't that Nebraska anymore. And I even said on a podcast, I'm like, there's no reason they can't win 5 in a row now. And I think they will. They might win 10 in a row. And they shouldn't limit their goals based on, or the collective media history around here and what we remember. Like, none of these guys know anything about that. Maybe Sam Hoiberg does, but none of the rest of them do. And it just doesn't matter. Like, they should be able to win these games. They're not in that hard of a league. These teams that they're playing are not that good. They can pull this off. And I think they can win even more. Like, winning at Purdue and Michigan State is a whole different kettle of fish, and they weren't able to do that. But they're not playing at Purdue and Michigan State over the last month. They're playing the games they're playing, and they can win a lot of them.
Interesting. Okay, so for about this started probably they had lost 3 in a row during the 6-game win streak, Sam. And I said, hey, are we to the point now where with Nebraska basketball and fans and media where we can start, remember this, predicting outcomes? They should be such and such, or they should be able to do this, and I said, I just get the sense, for whatever the reason, we can't shake the proverbial, well, we've never. So we don't embrace, remember that? We don't embrace, like, just saying, hey, we're a pretty good team. And I'm not going to kid you, because listening to you say that this morning, I was putting some stuff away in the freezer before I pulled out, and it's dumb, but I'm going to say it out loud because we're in the tree of trust. I was like, man, thank you, Coach Hoiberg, for not getting me skewered and killed, because last Tuesday or Wednesday, we talked to Kevin Suits, and I went on this tirade, and Kevin had my back, so I felt like I had a friend. I'm like, I'm kind of over the whole every game is a referendum on Coach Hoiberg's coaching prowess. Like, he's a good coach. This can be a good basketball team. They have to start embracing expectations. And I was like, please beat Washington. And I was like, oh, please win this game. And I was like, oh, man, please beat Ohio State. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, I'm being honest. Like, I was on pins and needles. But I'd kind of thrown the gauntlet down that I'm kind of over what you literally just said a lot more eloquently. It's that, hey, man, embrace it. This is – you guys can be okay if you just believe you're okay. Don't and the famous words of Tim Miles, don't put that crap on me.
I know. And he said that, and of course, the following year they went out and they played really poorly, and that was on Miles. Like, he didn't manage that team very well. And so Miles could do a good job of putting the button on the thing, but he couldn't get the thing over the hump. And I do feel like Hoiberg doesn't really talk about that, but I think he has the ability to get the team over the hump. And like, we're going to look back. Let's say the team makes the NCAA tournament. We're going to look back and we're going to say, this guy had 7 different starting lineups over the course of a month. He was quietly pushing buttons. Then he goes out in a press conference and he really puts it out there and he really puts it on these guys to beat Illinois, and then they do. And so, like, he's been pushing more coaching buttons than I think we appreciate.
Did you hear what he told Sean Morris?
But he doesn't make a big deal about it.
Right.
What's that?
Did you already told Sean Morris yesterday in the post? They came back to it on the network, so maybe people had turned away, but I'm a dork and I like coaching clips. He said Sean Morris wanted to make it about, like, he's just doing it. He's like, hey, you're scoring the basketball and you're rebounding and you're doing this, and what was it about the difference? And Coach, he's flat out said toughness. We weren't very tough. I talked about it. And so for him to kind of go back and pinpoint that it's just a matter of how hard you really want to play and what you're willing to put up with. And he stood his ground on that, Sam, because he's been saying that for how many weeks? 2, 3, 4? 4 for sure, right? Because it's through the losing streak. And he reiterated it again, even after a win. It's like, hey, man, we just need to remember who we are. We have to be a tough-minded team.
Yeah, and they do. And I think he's aware that they don't maybe have the level of shooting that they've had in the past. And so, like, you can't, there's certain things that you can't paper over or cover over when you don't just pour it in the way they did last year with Casey and CJ Wilcher. They've replaced CJ, I suppose, with Connor Essegian, and they've done that, but they didn't replace Casey. They weren't able to find a player that did that. And so they've had to do it a lot of different ways. Braxton Mia didn't play for a couple games, and he comes back, and
he's one of those guys they were talking about specifically. He may have answered the dinner bell. Right.
And Berke Buchtengel has been doing good things, and he hasn't been scoring consistently, but he has been able to do some other things, and he made about 3 or 4 plays in that Washington game, kind of right in a row, and he was gassed at the end of them. but he made a bunch of plays right in a row that were like 4 winning plays that I think led, 8 points. Went right out of the gate when they went on that big run. And, you're like, this guy's a pretty good player. There's things he needs to improve, but Hoiberg has found a way to keep him in the game and keep him engaged. And again, I think this is a pretty good coaching job by Hoiberg, but he doesn't toot his own horn. That's just not who he is, and neither does McDermott. Like, he doesn't toot his own horn either. He gives the credit to everybody else as well. But I think all 3 of them, and then you put in Crutchfeld, all 3 of them have had incredible coaching jobs.
And had to show some resiliency. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. All 3 of them, I think, have had maybe their best. We'll probably write a story on just like, again, these are not guys that need the spotlight or the credit. Crutch isn't like that. Mac's not like that. And Hoiberg's not like that. But all 3 of them have had really good years, as have their staffs. And sometimes it is about the guys that are kind of putting the team together and leading it, getting the sum becomes greater than the parts, and you watch Creighton, that's what it is at this point. Yes, you've got 2 very good players who might end up both being all Big East, but the contributions
that backcourt is crowded.
And Green, the way he's playing and the way that Trout's playing at times, and the way that, and they know when to put in Fedor Zugic, and he doesn't necessarily do a ton, but he doesn't hurt them. They're figuring it out, and Nebraska's figuring it out. They're getting contributions from all over. It's a true team. They all know who the star is on the team, and they defer to him when it really matters at the end of games. But everyone else kind of has their role, and so I think you're seeing 3 triumphs of coaching when you think about those 3 teams, all of which I think are going to the NCAA tournament. So I think all 3 will be in the NCAA tournament, and I think all 3 will be a testament to the leadership at the top of the group.
Sam, it's funny that you bring up all 3 of the coaches, right? Because Mac obviously gets his due. He's got the track record. People can see, hey, this is an incredible coaching job, especially from what this team looked like 2 months ago. They lose Pop Isaacs, and now all of a sudden they've got their longest win streak in history of being in the Big East, right? You see the turnaround with last year to this year with Crutchfield, and you go even from non-conference to in-season with Crutchfield, and you're like, okay, UNO's on the right track. Everybody can see he's doing a great job this year with that team. And then you have Hoiberg, who's coming off an NCAA tournament, but lost a lot of guys, especially a pretty key figure in Tominaga and another one in Rink Mass that we kind of forget about, right? We don't talk about a lot. Mm-hmm. And this guy just isn't really getting the same due.
I agree.
Is it because of how he comes off sort of publicly? Like, he's pretty understated. In terms of his public persona, he's more Frost than Rule. Like, what is that all it is? Like, does he just not say enough publicly for us to get his due?
Or, Sam, how much of it is that we are still, as Nebraska basketball fans,
just waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right. Well, they had the 6-game losing streak, and I think that annoyed people. Although I don't know that people attributed that to Fred. I've watched, I went to all the home games during that stretch and watched the ones on the road. And I don't know. Outside of the Rutgers game, I don't know that I felt like Nebraska did anything like terribly whatever. they should have beat Rutgers. I think you got to come out and put it on that team, and they didn't do it. But you know, and that during that streak, I didn't, you know, obviously they had the ugly loss at Purdue and Wisconsin, but those are the hardest places to play in the league, and so a lot of teams don't win there. They had a hard stretch. Now they're on the other side of it. I do think that Hoiberg deflects credit. Like he doesn't want it for himself. He's had a pretty celebrated career, so I don't know that he feels like that's, you know, his thing. And then, you know, he sticks to the message.
Yeah.
So like, unlike, and I'm not, you know, again, Mick Cronin can be fun to listen to, but you know, Mick Cronin will haul off like literally every press conference, and Fred doesn't do that. And so when Fred did it before the Illinois game, you know, Tom Chattel had a good column about it. Our beat writer Wilson kind of wrote, I'm like, that's different. That press conference was an outlier to his others. And it was almost like he was pushing a button that he probably didn't love to push or doesn't necessarily want to, or that's the last one he's going to push. And it worked. And then you kind of saw them, you know, come out of that slump and go on the other side of it. And then, you know, this is the team they're capable of being. Now, somewhere in the middle is probably where they're going to end up. But if they make the NCAA tournament and they get a better matchup than they did last time, you know, I think they have a chance to make the kind of history that people have been waiting for. And then at that point, you can kind of take off because, you know, if they're able to do that, I don't think they have the most NIL money, but they have probably the best facility in the Big Ten, or one of them, in terms of practice. And then they have a great arena. And so, like, when players understand what it's like to play in PBA, they're going to want to play there. Like, the testimonials that you'll get from teammates of, like, guys, this is where you want to play basketball. That matters to guys. Like, they want to play in full angry arenas. And below, after Penn State and Michigan State, Nebraska's got the third best atmosphere in the Big Ten. So if they keep it going here, I think they can sustain it because of all the things they're able to offer a transfer who might be interested in playing a lot of fun basketball. And Hoiberg's brand of basketball is fun to watch.
You know, the cool thing, I'm glad Crutch is getting some run because I like him personally, so I'm a smidge biased. But one of the things I like about whether it's Mac or Coach Hoiberg or in this particular case, Crutch, is like their methodology is their methodology. And I think working within that framework sometimes can be a little bumpy, right? Crutch went, hey, I want bigger guards. I want length. I want to be able to size up the summit. And, you know, people kind of scoffed at passing over some recruiting guys. And they're good players, right? And they're thriving in the conference. But
it's me. I'm people.
It's not really. It's well,
I'm one of them.
Yeah, one of them. Okay,
I crushed him for it. I did.
But it's certainly not alone.
Yeah.
And especially locally, Sam, like I hear it all you go to a high school arena and it's like, it's not that UNO is winning. It's why aren't they looking at this guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
You just hear that, right?
Yeah.
So,
right.
But then you look and you see how they're winning with the athletic wings and the bigger guards and the length and how they suffocate some of these backcourts in the Summit League. Yeah, and guys get their buckets. Don't get me wrong. Like the Summit League, they score.
Mm-hmm.
But his methodology and kind of how he put this roster together, it's working. It took a year, but it's working. It could pay. Those are the cool things that I like, right? Where whatever you believe in, do that and give yourself a chance.
I couldn't agree with you more. Not that you can't do it more than one way in the Summit League, but one of the things you do run into if you try to, you know, do it the way South Dakota State does it or whatever, is you're competing against South Dakota State's history, which is pretty good. So, you know, it's not always easy to beat them out for recruits. But what I appreciate is, you know, he's willing to go to junior college and go get a great player, an athletic guy, like a Sutton, and he's able to get the portal. He's able to draw, you know, a high school player. Like he's built the roster comprehensively. And, I guess I would describe him like he's like a Bill Parcells. Like Parcells would always say, well, you got to have this size and this at this position. And Crutch has done a really good job of building the program, like you said, the way that he thinks it should be built. And when he plugs in the guys the sizes and lengths that he wants from his players, it looks really good. So like it's a vision that he has, and he's been able to make good on it. And again, I think they may be the best story of the three in some ways, because
I think they
not
are.
a lot of people expected much.
I think they are
from them.
I think they're the best.
And they're
story.
really good.
And you know what? And I'm doing like real-time play-by-play with these guys in the group chat, and I'm thinking, oh, what are you doing, Omaha? North Dakota State makes this run. They cut it to, I don't know, 69-68 or something like, 69-68. And they immediately like ratcheted up this defensive energy, and North Dakota State couldn't score. And then it's like you blink and it's 79-70 with a minute to play, and you're like, how did they just push that?
It sort of felt like Summit League St. John's.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And just North Dakota State couldn't handle what was being thrown at them on the defensive end. I was like, that's what he was after this whole time. When we need to get stops in this high-scoring, explosive league, we're going to slow these guards down.
And I think, Adrian Dowell, the AD, deserves some credit, too, for allowing UNO to not have to play, 12 bye games in the non-conference. Some is one thing. Like, they went to Iowa State, and Iowa State, beat them pretty good. But it used to be when Darren Hansen was there. Well, Darren Hansen had to play for a month on the road, and that was hard. It eats into a team's confidence when you have to play that many high level D1 teams in a row.
It's hard to start 0-12.
Right, having a couple.
I mean, I watched Abilene Christian give them the business at home.
Yeah.
It's not the same team.
It's not a good Abilene Christian team.
It's not the same.
Yeah, like it's okay to have a couple of those games, and I know they went out. I think they went out to UNLV this year too, and played out there. But like, I think they've done a nice job of balancing their schedule philosophy so that they're testing themselves and they're getting a couple of bye games in there. But it's not all. They don't go into the Summit League being like, well, we don't really know how good we are because we just spent time playing teams that make $17 million in revenue. So I appreciate what they've been able to accomplish in that arena too.
That's our guy, Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Great stuff as always, Sam. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Sam.
Take care.
More Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. We're back here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here on the Pillar Exterior stage. And we're brought to you by our friends over at Centris Federal Credit Union. It might be that time of year. Maybe you need to get a new vehicle, right? They've got you covered on your auto loans. Go to centrisfcu.org to talk to one of their experts, see what options you have, and see what they can do to get you into a new vehicle in February, if that's what you're needing. If you need something else, they've got you covered. Just checking and savings. They've got mortgages. They can help you refinance. Whatever you need, talk to an expert at centrisfcu.org. Nationally insured through NCUA. That's Centris Federal Credit Union. DB.
What's up, buddy?
I wanted to talk a little bit more about this Chris Crutchfield thing because I was very vocal last year, early in this year as well, about the exact same thing that came up with Sam in that interview last segment about
the very same thing that I heard at the Papillion Southwest West Side game.
I would guess so, yeah,
because it was
about the lack of recruiting local guys for Omaha, and it's a thing that bothers me because I like basketball in the state of Nebraska, right? I want local kids to be rewarded with local offers, right? Pretty simple.
I understand.
I think it's a really good way to continue to foster the sport in the state. That matters to me. That's why, even though people think I hate Nebraska basketball, I want Nebraska basketball to be good. Yes, I'm a Creighton fan. I want Omaha basketball to be good. That's why I was so frustrated with Crutchfield last year and early this year. Obviously, what he's doing this year is working to great success. Most people have him projected to win the Summit and make their first NCAA tournament as a Division I team. Awesome.
And I didn't take that stuff I mean, I'm a Crutch guy. So
yeah, 100%.
Like, but I do hear it.
You understand what I'm saying.
I hear it quite a bit.
So here's my question though. It's working really well this year.
Yep.
how sustainable is recruiting that type of player to a place like a Summit League team?
I think it's very.
Okay.
So
because that would be my concern.
Okay, so I watch him pretty close, so I could be a little. Just take this with a grain of salt.
Sure. Don't worry, I'll push back if I feel it necessary.
One of the things I think that staff has been really good at, is identifying who works for them. And I think there are a lot.
In terms of their system?
Yep.
Okay.
I think there are a lot of those types of players out there.
Okay.
The basketball market is over flooded. We're reaching. This is the dirty little secret about hoops.
Okay.
We're reaching this critical juncture in basketball where it's become super haves and have-nots.
Okay.
And there's this middle portion that's got lost. You're either playing on the shoe circuit, paying, or receiving $3,500 in fees. If you're good enough, somebody will take care of that for you, or they waive it, or you're paying that to play at an elite level. So the development has suffered. It's suffered mightily.
100%.
Okay. Again, just my opinion.
I agree.
So people either think this is what it's happening. COVID hurt basketball the most.
Okay.
And I would maybe say baseball second.
Okay.
Football is way off. So what's happened now is because coaches need to turn programs around so quickly, this is what they do. If you're not playing in a power conference, what you do is you play the short game. You try to get as many athletic guys that can play as you can. You're not so much worried about development because you feel like in a year or two those guys will get picked off anyway. So you try to get while the getting's good.
So that's where my question lies. Right? If you have these, because hang on. So
go ahead. Then tell me what you think.
Okay.
So what I think Crutch is doing at Omaha with his staff is they're very good at identifying what works for them, and they're so good with kind of how they're treated, what's happening on campus.
Having a good AD is a huge deal.
Just somebody that's for you.
Yeah.
Right? He can get 2 and 3 years out of these guys, and there's a lot of them. There's a ton of them. So I think it is sustainable.
So what we're saying basically is, hey, you get 2 years out of him.
He's pulling from a huge
He's recruiting.
Pull.
He's recruiting nationally.
I mean, aren't you disappointed? Like the portal in it's sad.
Sure. There's a lot of, and we don't talk about it the way we do in football. There's a lot of kids left out to dry.
I mean, you're
left out in the cold,
just stuck.
Yeah, and so
it's hard to be seen. There's the boys basketball numbers at the varsity level and competitive sports is down dramatically across the country. Because what happens is either you're really, really high end or people just think you can't play. Yeah. So people don't play.
So they say, why bother?
So we saw the boom. We saw the housing market boom in basketball.
And now we're in a little recession.
Yep, it's gonna have to settle back down.
So
888-638-4876 if you disagree. That's what I've seen over the last handful of years.
So it's kind of funny because I feel like what you're describing is something I advocated for mid-majors and low majors to do, and that's basically run your program like a JUCO.
I do remember that. You spent a couple. I remember that, and you're very animate. So
that's essentially what you're saying they're doing. You get 2-3 years out of them, you're good.
You have some traction. But what I'm not willing to concede for Crutch at Omaha is that guys are just going to leave.
Fair, but
because I do think they like it here, and
sure,
all he needs to do is win one time.
So here's my question, though.
And then you're not that far off. And I know what I'm saying, and people won't be able to handle it. But would you rather be in Omaha or Brookings?
Omaha.
Okay. But do you know what Brookings did?
Win.
They have a couple poster children.
Yeah, they won, and they have
a couple of poster children.
But,
so they're able to they can sell it.
What do they have poster children for, though? Moving on to bigger and better programs.
And you have 2 coaches that did it too.
So, but so that's my point is that's a very JUCO model.
Okay, but listen. So
right?
This is I'm just finishing the thought.
Yeah.
So if Crutch can win, say they get into
let's say they get to Dayton and win a game. That counts as an NCAA tournament.
They get to the big dance,
Yeah.
right? He only has to do that once.
Mm-hmm.
Then all the other good things that they do
start to fall in line.
Are validated.
And you get to live
I'm not saying that they're going to be South Dakota State tomorrow.
You get to live in Omaha instead of Brookings instead of Fargo.
That's the model.
Yeah.
That's the model.
Like,
and they've got a huge one. I think they're the 13th. They're Thursday. They're in Brookings.
Yeah.
By the way.
Are they in Brookings or Vermilion? Or are they playing?
It's DSU.
Oh, okay.
If anybody's going to South Dakota State and you're looking for somebody that won't talk,
unless you have bad music choice and then he won't stop talking,
that won't talk, and you're just going up there to watch some hoops, I can do a couple of business deals and watch good basketball. I will ride with you.
So here's my deal.
I should ask Crutch if I.
Are you guys going?
I think that I could take. No, they're going to spend the night.
You don't want to spend the night.
No,
not in Brookings.
No, and Jackson hasn't got me my apartment in Sioux Falls yet.
If you're going to run it like a JUCO, which is basically,
I'm not going to concede that though.
That's what you're describing.
So sure, but I think the part you're not listening to is I think he can keep the guys in the program.
But that's not really the goal. I don't.
Sure, it is. If you're the coach, you don't want them leaving.
Sure, but if you're talking about, hey, you got to get proof of concept with players, coaches, and wins, then part of that is to move on to bigger programs, right? Like,
I think it's the ability.
The William Kyles, the Zeke Mayos, the Baylor Shiremans.
I think it's the ability to get paid to play.
Right, which is not going to happen at the degree most of these guys want in a Summit League team.
I think he can keep them.
Okay,
it's a pretty nice. They're doing good things. They enjoy being here.
I get that. I really do.
And here's the other thing I don't think you're acknowledging.
Okay,
it's a very competitive market. There are a lot of. This is going to sound like I don't appreciate J.J. White, but there are a lot of J.J. White-esque stories out there.
Sure.
Thousands.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's very competitive. So the more Crutch and these guys can be around these guys, say, be appreciative. Man, this is a good deal. Let's do our thing together and see what happens.
Yeah.
I think that's what you sell.
And that's totally fair.
You feel me?
The place that I get a little hesitant, and again, I'm the one that was advocating for running it like a JUCO in order to be successful at this level, right? Because I feel like you have to. I feel like your success stories.
I think that was the model year one.
I think
it was like we got to get some ready-made guys because we're going to lose them in 2 years.
Well, and I think the success stories are your recruiting, right? So you're not going to see a ton of guys go from Summit League to the NBA. What you might see a lot of guys go is Summit League Big 12 NBA or Summit League Big East NBA or like Frankie Fiddler, Summit League Big 10 maybe NBA or wherever. Like if that's the model, that's what I mean by a JUCO model, because your immediate success.
Maybe a guy or two, but it's not everybody moves on.
No, but that's the pitch. That's why you get the new guys, is because they think they can move on.
If I can play meaningful games in March, I'll come see you.
That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla, more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi, Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, reminding you that Glow Big Red is this week, starting at noon on Wednesday the 12th, going all the way through noon on the 13th. That's Thursday. That is the Glow Big Red event. Raises funds for scholarships, colleges and departments, student organizations, basically everything you can think of, including Husker athletics, arts and culture, the whole thing, various programs around campus. It helps support all those things we love about the University of Nebraska. Go to glowbigred.unl.edu in order to make those donations. The goal for 2025 is 5,500 gifts. Let's help make that goal a reality. And an exclusive giveaway when donors make gifts totaling $75 or more during that 24-hour period of Glow Big Red, you'll receive a pair of Husker fleece mittens. Again, that's glowbigred.unl.edu. DB.
RL.
I think a lot about these recruiting conversations with basketball, right? Because I've sort of been in that world, not at that level, right?
Yeah.
But I've been in the high school eval world, and I've been at small schools trying to figure out, okay, where can we find our niche to sustainably recruit and have success, right? It's hard when you have a resources gap. right? It's hard when you don't have, and Creighton's done a really good job without football money to figure that out. And they've done a really good job of,
I think it was the 16,000 knuckleheads at Marquette. That's part of it. I mean, that's shoot.
Like they've done a really good job of it. But they've also done a really good job of establishing an identity.
I know it holds 17,800. I just don't
think it was a full 17,800.
Yes.
Maybe sold. Yeah. Maybe not in butts and seats. But so they've done a really good job.
You can see a lot from section 224.
It's dark up there. You got to be careful.
So I saw a guy that we know.
Yeah.
That tweeted out a picture.
The Sindelar?
Nope.
Okay.
And I was like,
you thought he would have better seats than that?
No. It was this vantage point is very similar. He has to be someplace close.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I wanted to look.
He's kind of look around. But where's my guy?
I'm like, man, I bet he's over there in 223. You start seeing the jump. I'm like, he has to be close
that's
to me.
The same angle I'm looking at here.
You ever done that?
Yeah, 100%. And then if it's somebody I know, I'll text them. I'll be like, hey, where are you?
Yeah. Right. But anyway.
But no, like Creighton's done a really good job of establishing identity and recruiting to that identity, right?
Yeah.
It's part of the reason I felt a little unsure about some of the guys they brought in this year because I wasn't sure how they fit into the identity. Pop Isaacs, kind of a volume shooter, small guard, can't really defend. Now, we saw the good of Pop Isaacs early, right? I know it was the exhibition. He was incredible against Purdue, against a good Purdue team, right? Really, really good against Kansas, obviously, and then we haven't seen him since. Or Jemiah Neal, for instance. You look at that guy and you go, okay, I maybe like him if he comes in the way Damian Jefferson did as a sophomore or redshirt freshman. You got a couple years with him, turn him into a dude. I didn't think the level of development he had from game 1 to game 20 or whatever we're at, 24. What are they, 18? Yeah, like 24. I didn't think that was possible within a year. That's pretty crazy work that they've done with Jemiah Neal. But that's kind of my issue, and maybe Omaha is in the process of establishing that identity right now, and I don't have the whole picture yet, right? Because that's definitely on the board. That's definitely on the table. Because it's really easy to go back 10 years to Coach Mack and CU and go, okay, well, without McDermott, Ravi, Gibbs, and Manigault, what's this look like? Especially the next year when they don't have those guys. And you go, ugh, Hegner and Zierden and Chapman and what's, Zach Hansen, what's going on here?
Yeah, I went through, it's funny you say that.
Mm-hmm.
Went down a rabbit hole beside myself over the weekend. So what did I want to do?
Mm-hmm.
I watched old North Carolina Duke games. And there were times.
What years are we talking?
So there were various. So you know what it started with?
Mm-hmm.
It started with St. John playing Georgetown. And it was Mullen, Walter Berry, Winnington. Can't remember who Mark Jackson should have been playing, but he subbed in behind this lefty guard.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm watching old school 80s Big East.
So it's like 84?
This was 82.
Okay.
82, 83. And then
okay.
I progressively kept getting higher. I got to 84. It was 1 versus 5, and St. John's laid an egg and at Madison Square Garden. And Lucky Luke on a second in his sweater, and him had all these rituals. And I was like, God, I forgot about this. I was a kid.
Yeah.
But it morphed into, when you go to YouTube, it just has similar things.
Yeah, things like other things you might like, whatever.
So I went down the North Carolina Duke history and throw the records out the window, and there's been some of those. And I remember, I'm like, gosh, how did Carolina get to the point where Bobby Frazier and Wes Miller were starting? And the only reason Wes Miller rings the bell is because obviously some people think he's in line to take Hubert's job.
Yeah, pretty good coach.
Although Hubert is just going to enlarge his staff and get a general manager, and apparently everything will be okay.
It's going to be fine.
Which, by the way, they are the lock of the day. Lock of the day.
North Carolina?
Getting 5.5 from Clemson.
Okay.
They mess around and win.
All right.
On the road, with Clemson coming off the huge
upset
win against Texas or Duke. Ink still wet on their fingertips. Still wet. We've been reading about ourselves. You get
have a little trip up.
Lock it up.
All right.
Anyway,
6 p.m. ESPN. Go check it out.
It's weird how those recruiting cycles go for programs when you try to buy yourself time.
Yeah.
And Hydrangea, he's got a great pull. Just with the analogies that I'm giving, because I think what I'm trying to say for Omaha is it's more like, hey, we're not grooming you for something bigger and better. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like an unspoken given. That's not your pitch, though. Your pitch is still, hey, this is a great place to be. We can develop you. You've been overlooked. Let's just see what's out there. And oh, by the way, like if we get here to March,
mm-hmm.
like he's got a legitimate chance to sell some things in the Summit from a location standpoint. Maybe not. You're not St. Thomas yet.
Mm-hmm. Money-wise?
You're probably not even Denver. Right? Denver spends a ton, and it's Denver, right?
Yeah.
So
it's a nice place to live.
But I do think it's better than Vermilion.
Agreed.
Even though Vermilion's got paper.
Yeah.
And it's a better place to live than Brookings, no disrespect. But you don't have SDSU's, or Fargo for that matter, NDSU's
mm-hmm.
basketball pedigree.
Yeah.
If you do, though, I don't think you have to do it for as long as NDSU and SDSU has.
No, because Omaha's more appealing.
I think you only have to do it once.
Because Omaha's way more appealing.
Yep.
I get that. I really do. I have a hard time.
By the way, Wes Miller and Bobby Frazier. Stop it.
You don't even want Wes Miller as your head coach, do you?
No.
Like, you don't feel good about that?
No.
I don't. Do you have anybody? Do you have a wish list?
No.
Have you allowed yourself to go there yet?
Did you see Indiana's?
Yeah. I saw Mac on one of Indiana's.
They're dreaming big.
Brad Stevens, baby. That's their. Brad Stevens is what school was it? Was it Tennessee that always thought they were going to get Gruden?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, Brad Stevens is the John Gruden for Indiana basketball. Yeah. Just, oh no, Gruden's coming to Tennessee. It's like, I don't think he is.
I just, unless Carolina tail spends.
Yeah, they're going to keep him. Yeah.
I think they'd have to miss the tournament. Yeah. And they very well could.
I was it. That's it. That's on the table.
I still think, are they next four out this morning?
I'll check.
They're not last four. I think they're next four.
I'll check bracket matrix. That's my go-to.
Man, Clemson's tough.
Clemson is. Obviously we saw that against Duke, right?
And you saw the scoring droughts. It is wild, man.
For as good as they can look, my God, they just go through some stretches.
I just worry. At the end of the day, I worry about their shooting.
Yeah, I worry about their shooting. I worry about the scoring stretches. I worry about.
By the way, Nebraska got away with one yesterday, holding Thornton at 9.
Yeah, they also got away with like a 5-minute scoring drought at one point too.
So you're watching that thing real time.
Yeah.
How is Bryce not shooting? You're talking about when they lost the lead in the first half.
Yeah.
Your two best players. Well, Juwan's on the bench. Bryce didn't get a shot.
Yeah, because Juwan got 2 fouls. 9 minutes, 8 minutes, somewhere in there. Yeah. And
Thornton is a dude. That's the dude I call the bucket getter.
Yeah. So that's kind of the thing that I don't totally trust about Bryce Williams is it doesn't seem like late in games he seems to recognize, hey, this is Bryce Williams. I got to be the best player on the floor time. There's stretches during the game where things can get away from them. I don't know that he recognizes real time.
So Coach Hoiberg said something.
The aggressiveness that he needs there.
Interesting along those lines in the presser when he said, here's the thing about Bryce is he's managed to really elevate his game over the last handful of games without forcing the issue. So there's always for you what you're saying.
Sometimes you have to force the issue.
There's always going to be that fine line.
Yeah, like sometimes when you're the best player or the only guy that can go get his own bucket, sometimes you have to force the issue. That's part of it. And that's the thing I just
don't think Nebraska's built like that on the offensive end for him to be like the hostile takeover guy.
I don't know if it's a hostile takeover, but there's a handful of possessions. We think about this with relievers in baseball, right? You shouldn't always save your closer for the ninth inning. That's not always the highest leverage situation.
I mean, I hear you, but don't you think Nebraska's offense they need balance? And I don't mean even balance. I mean, like, you have to show me you need some paint touches from Wallen, right? Like,
Agree.
You occasionally need a guy like a Sejan to come off a little pin down and knock one. Like, they're the sum of the parts team.
But they're also a team that when it's getting away from them, they need Bryce Williams to grab it and get it back.
By the way, for the best game that he probably played offensively, do you know who had the worst plus-minus for Nebraska?
Who's that? Sam Hoiberg?
Mia. -7.
That's DBM Ravi, Lulla. Jason Cole up next to talk a little bit more NFL as we put a bow on the Super Bowl here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, presented by Centrist Federal Credit Union. That's DBM Ravi, Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're joined now by Jason Cole. He's an author and a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector. Jason, how are you this morning?
I'm fantastic. What's going on?
Jason, every time I get you, it's hard not to take you down the Hall of Fame hole, but it is because just your Rolodex. All right, fine. You're going to be easy going. You chuckled. You humored me. I'll get to the Super Bowl in a second. As a guy that is well versed in the Hall of Fame as anyone we will ever be able to talk to, were you surprised at the small number going in this year?
No, because they changed the format of how they do the voting, and most people don't understand this because they don't pay attention to this, and for good reason. It's not like everyday kind of important stuff. But when they changed the voting mechanism or the procedure, it was going to create a smaller Hall of Fame, and that was intended on the Hall of Fame's part. We don't come up with the procedures as selectors. The Hall of Fame and their executive committee comes up with its procedure, and so they've been getting complaints in recent years because a lot of the current Hall of Famers think that the classes were getting too big and that guys who were not of high enough quality were getting into the Hall of Fame. So they did this change in procedure to remedy that and see how it worked. And the worst case scenario played itself out, which is only 3 guys made it from the modern class and only 1 made it from the group of senior candidates, contributor, and coach candidate. There were 5 guys up for that. Only 1 made it and the most that could have made it was 3, right? So the fewest number of modern candidates and the fewest number of those other categories made it. That's why you have a 4-man group. Now I think they're going to come back and they're going to realize they did the math wrong on this one, and that they've got to fix the math on it. And we made this point because, like, Mike Holmgren should have easily gotten in, to me. And then there were 2 other guys.
Well, I'm gonna get to those if you don't mind. If I can guess right.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Tony Dungy said it. There's at least 9 or 10 guys on this ballot who deserve to get in the Hall of Fame at some point. 5 of them should have made it this year, and they changed the system where we used to get to a final 5 and it was simply a yes or no.
Yeah.
And instead they made it a final 7, and in order you could only vote for 5. And each one of those 5 to get in had to get 80%. Well, when you start to do the math on that, it's really hard to get 80% beyond 3 guys.
Fantastic insight. I appreciate that, Jason. Let me ask you about 2 guys, but for different reasons. Torrey Holt, who I feel like has got to be in, and I'll listen to that. And then Luke Kuechly, who maybe it's just not soon enough, but it's got to be pretty much a slam dunk.
Okay, what do you want me to say?
Agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious.
Okay. So Holt will get in, you think?
Look, Holt should have. Look, we've been arguing about Holt and Reggie Wayne for
why though, JC?
47 years.
What the Holt thing? I was floored. That was probably my biggest gripe.
Well, and it's one of my gripes too, because we got 3 receivers in there, 3 guys who were high quality guys who all deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. Torrey Holt, Reggie Wayne. And I'm a big Steve Smith fan, right? All 3 of those guys belong in, but they're not all going to. I know how this works. They're not going to all go in at one time. It's a log jam, right?
Yeah.
Because each one has their set of fans. Okay. Get one of them in. Get them out of the way. We had the same thing going on in offensive line when we had Faneca, Hutchinson, Mawai, and Baselli. It's come on, guys, get one of them in. I know that each one of as a fan of that guy and think he should be the first one. It's like, forget being a fan of him. Just say, we all agree they're all Hall of Famers. Like, start moving them along. And we did, and they all went in. And now it's with the wide receivers, and it's going to get worse because we got Larry Fitzgerald coming in a couple of years, and we got other receivers who have big numbers who are eventually coming in. So, yeah, like Torrey Holt should go in. But this is a math problem, not an opinion problem.
Okay.
And that's where it goes. And Kuechly, yes. Personally, I thought Kuechly was the best player on this ballot. He didn't play as long as some of the other guys and generate some of the other numbers. So I can see why he would, be held out for a year or two, and some other guys would be moved ahead. But I think he's going to get in because he's Patrick Willis. Same kind of thing. He's Terrell Davis. Great player, slightly shorter career, but that's what a Hall of Famer looks like. And you just go, that's the guy. And so I think that he'll get in. I think Marshall Yanda had the best resume of anybody on here, but
those poor interior offensive line guys, man. It's tough.
They get killed. They just get killed in this process, and I understand it. But look, the bottom line is we didn't get enough guys in this year. We're going to have a meeting, and I think a number of voters, such as myself, are going to raise the complaint of, hey guys, you overcorrected. When you listen to the gripes are really, to me, about the inordinate number of senior candidates who are getting in. Like, especially, a few years ago, they put in 20 guys because they felt compelled for whatever reason to put in 20 guys among the senior candidates. And it's like, those guys had their time. And I know that some people feel really strongly about those senior candidates who didn't get in their first 20 years. But there's a reason they didn't get in. You have to draw a line somewhere. So anyways, that's my spiel.
All right, last one for the Hall of Fame. And his career isn't over yet. These interior linebackers are always interesting when you go back and reflect on their career. But what are your thoughts about Levante David?
He's going to be close. He's not Kuechly. He's not Patrick Willis. He's awful. He's really productive, though. I mean, like super, super productive. Is he as good as Zach Thomas? It's probably pretty close. So there's going to have to be some. There's going to have to be some thorough examination of his career. But I don't think it's going to be easy. He's not going to just walk in.
We're talking with Jason Cole. He's a Pro Football Hall of Fame selector and an author, expert on the NFL. Jason, let's move over to the Super Bowl here because, kind of in your wheelhouse, a lot of talk going into the game was about legacy and people talking about Mahomes. If he wins a three-peat, then that puts him in the category of Brady, even though he'd have to win another three-peat to catch Brady's 7 Super Bowls. Like, as you watch that game play out, who do you think's career in terms of the way we talk about them was impacted the most?
Brady or Mahomes?
Anybody.
That's a good one.
Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts had a game that most people would not have said he was capable of having. He was, he had one bad throw, was affected by a blitz as he got hit, and so that was a physical thing. He just got beat, and it ended up being not that big a deal because it was essentially a punt. But he hit 17 and 22, and the plays that he hit were huge. He got them out in front. The most important thing that they did is they challenged Jalen Hurts, as being the Chiefs defense, challenged Jalen Hurts to make plays. And he did. He got him out to that 10-0 lead. Once they got to a 10-0 lead, that completely changes the way that Philly's defense can play. And they can turn loose the 4 guys up front and say, go dominate those guys from the Chiefs on their offensive line. And not to say that they weren't dominating before that, but they could really just say, look, go get Mahomes. Because they're not going to continue to run at us all game. They're going to have to make some chunk plays. Go get Mahomes. They did, and all of a sudden it snowballed. And this is the game. I thought the Chiefs were going to win, and I said so because I thought that they could keep the tempo of the game under control.
Me?
Once they couldn't control the tempo, this was the perfect way for Philly to win, and they were going to win in basically a landslide this way because the Chiefs' offensive line is just awful. And they covered and salute Mahomes and Reed for covering it up so effectively all season long. But the offensive line is just bad. I mean, Tooney's a guard. It's just what it is.
Yep.
He's a great guard, but he's a guard. And Jawan Taylor cheats on every play. And so you need two real offensive tackles. And, like Jawan Taylor, if you're going to play him, he's got to go to right guard and not play in space anymore. But those guys got exposed, and that's just the way it is.
Were you surprised, Jason, that the Chiefs didn't? Because I'm 100%. Even though I thought the Eagles would win, I thought the way that the Chiefs would stay in it is because they had been ball control all year. Were you surprised that like Hunt and Pacheco and the screen game and some of that wasn't more of a part early on that they came out throwing it 3 times in a row the way they did?
Well, they didn't get first downs. So, I mean, I was just having a conversation with they had to run the ball more. Well, they didn't have the ball. It's like they went 3 and out. And, yeah, they tried some short passes. They tried to run one screen, and Philly saw it the whole way.
It's just not advantageous for a screen on 3rd and long on your 7, right? So I don't really count that, but I get it.
You're right. But, see, the other thing about it is when you know they can't block you, and you can drop and you can drop your 7 guys, and they don't have time to throw deep, you're taking away every short and intermediate throw.
Yeah.
And they're trying to open it up a little bit. And as soon as you get behind, the whole thing snowballs on top of itself. And you feel like you got to make up ground. If you rewrite the game plan, you would say, okay, on the first 2 series, we'd like to run a little bit more and see if that works better. But that's obvious. You tried something to open it up with a little bit of throwing, whereas in most games you've been opening up a little bit of running. I'm not sure that the running would have been any more effective against that Philly defensive line. Philly's defensive line, that's all men. Like, they're serious. Those are dudes.
And there's about 6 of them.
There might be 8 of them. Okay, they just roll. Like, they're so good. They let Hargrave go a couple of years ago. Yep. It's we don't miss him anymore. That was a guy who made like $50 million for.
Milton gets a strip sack, and everybody's like, "Who?"
Right. They're dudes. Those are some dudes, and they won playing a 4-man line. I mean, they don't even move Jalen Carter. Like, they just say, this is not like we're going to trick you and we're going to put him in different places and maybe we'll put him outside. It's like, no, we just line him up there. Stop him.
Okay.
Because you want to stop him, you can't stop the other guys. They're just that good up front right now.
Jason, the quick backstory to this is the elevating of Mahomes with a potential win and kind of him being in his own tier and where he ranks amongst his peers currently playing versus Brady, who had Manning, who was very close to being a peer. And so I would say, man, it just seems a lot like Burrow is – some of these guys, some of these top 5 quarterbacks are really, really good. They just can't beat Mahomes. How careful do I need to be when I'm watching this where I say, you know what? Like, Burrow plays under duress all the time. Like, is this what it would be like for Mahomes without – the luxury of whatever time? Like, how careful do we need to be in critiquing in the moment?
I'd be careful in that one. I would say that Mahomes is special in that he has the combination of physical ability to go with an understanding of the game. Like, the fact that Patrick Mahomes basically shrank the way that his game had to be played this year to fit the way that their offensive line, to fit the level of their offensive line talent, is a real salute, or real indication of how smart he is as a football player. And he said, I know I can't just I can't just drop seven steps or 5 and just wing it downfield. Wait for guys. He took the little play. He realized, look, he got sacked 38 times this year. That's 10 more than he's ever been sacked before. That's a lot of hits on him. It's like, look, I can't play the way I've been playing earlier in my career, not because he can't do it, but because the guys around him can't do it, specifically the offensive linemen. So I think his football IQ is off the charts, along with the physical ability. Now, what you have to do is fix the physical side of it, of what's around him, by going and getting better offensive tackles. You're going to have other things to do. You got to replace Kelsey at some point in time, probably either this coming year you get another guy, and he steps into that role, or the year after you get a guy. You're going to have to do stuff like that. But his acumen is off the charts. His ability is off the charts. And so I still think he's a step ahead of the guys like Burrow and Allen and Lamar Jackson. And I don't think that the competition is as deep as when Brady was in the league, for that top spot. But, everything in this league is always small margins. If the Chiefs don't fix this problem, the other teams are eventually going to expose it. And Lamar Jackson is eventually going to, fix what bothers him in the postseason. I just believe that he's going to get better at it, and that's going to make it more of a challenge because, the Ravens aren't going anywhere anytime soon, and the Bills aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And Cincinnati, the only thing that holds Cincinnati back is, the creativity of ownership. Do they know how to get things done to take advantage of the talent that they have?
Let me ask you something, Jason. What would you do, not if you're Aaron Rodgers so much as if you're the league and you believe the reports that he's not coming back to New York?
What would I do?
What would you do as a team that could possibly be interested in Aaron Rodgers? Would you tread lightly? Would you make it?
I want to know, are you dedicated to being there in the off season? Are you all in, or are you just talking? And what do you really want your legacy to be? We can talk about how you were one of the greatest throwers of football of all time. You won one title. You can, you're one of the, you've got all the numbers in the world, but you whined and complained for half of your career about circumstances, whether that was, Ted Thompson, or whether that was Mike McCarthy, or whether that was what was the Jets. It was always somebody else's fault.
Even Grudegus for a little while.
I'm sorry, even what?
Even his current general manager not current at Green Bay for a while. They seemed like they were at odds.
Well, it was a power struggle. Aaron's the kind of guy who is a little too smart for himself,
but not nearly as smart as he thinks.
Right, he's not as smart as he thinks. He's he's a super intelligent guy, but I think sometimes, based on having watched him and been around him, he thinks he's smarter than he is. And maybe that's the Stanford guy coming out at me against the Cal guy. I don't know. It could be. But I always get this look like he's just this incredible perfectionist living in a world where not everybody's perfect, and he doesn't know how to adjust to them. He expects them to adjust to him, and
that's good.
Man, it just doesn't work in football that way. And so I like Aaron a lot. I think he's one of the greatest throwers of all time. I enjoy talking to him. I really do. So it's not a personal thing, like I dislike him because of it, but I see how his flaws have undermined what should have been a much more brilliant career in terms of winning.
That's Jason Cole, Pro Football Hall of Fame selector, author, and general NFL expert. We appreciate the time, as always, Jason, and I guess enjoy the off season.
Kinda. It's quick.
Always do. Yeah, there's what there is of it. Yes, I will enjoy it.
Thanks, Jason.
Go Cardinal.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Yeah, there you go.
That's Jason Cole, our NFL expert, Pro Football Hall of Fame selector. You know the funny thing about Aaron Rodgers?
Do you feel like he needs to win again?
Yes, I always have.
God, that's incredible.
I'm the one who said, for as good as he is, only having won Super Bowl is an indictment.
It feels like, and I don't even know about a Super Bowl. I just think a good season.
I feel like we're a little late for a Super Bowl, if I'm being honest.
Listen, he is rapidly being forgot about
in that category
for as excellent as he was.
Because it wasn't just Brady Manning; it was Brady Manning Rodgers, right?
And Breeze
and Breeze. But I never put Breeze in that same category. He was really good. I think he probably unfairly got a little system quarterback like tag, right?
All quarterbacks that win for a long time.
I understand.
Are system guys.
But that's sort of the category we'll put Breeze in. The thing I will say about Aaron Rodgers, and I think this is what hurts him. Peyton Manning can always lean on, well, I had to go through Tom to get to the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers didn't have to go through Tom to get to the Super Bowl. He only got to one. If he had lost 4.
But he did, though, on the back half. I mean, Brady didn't retire till 22. 21.
I understand that, but for his prime in Green Bay, he didn't have to go through Tom to get to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I hear you. You mean in the
NFC. Like, if he had done the Jerry West thing and made the finals and lost to the Celtics a million times, that's more forgivable to me because you go, he just kept freaking running into Tom. But as a NFC guy, he had a lot of years where it's been 15 years. That's a full-ass career. It's been 15 years since the 2010 Super Bowl. He didn't make another one. And everybody else got a turn in that. The Seahawks had their turn. The 49ers have had 2 turns since then. Like, everybody else has had their turn in the NFC. He only made one? That's kind of damning. Yeah. For a guy of that talent level, that's kind of damning.
I just think the whole system thing is the one thing that makes, and I'll give it to you with Manning and Denver, because the 55 touchdown year in Denver, even though they didn't win it.
They made it, though. They didn't win it, but they made it.
Was incredible.
Yeah.
Manning did it in a whole different way with a whole different group.
Mm-hmm.
We saw last night.
Four different head coaches.
And I'm careful.
He went to Super Bowls with 4 different head coaches.
I'm careful not to downplay Mahomes' accomplishments because I do think he's a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think we see wow, this is unbelievable, how a guy could do it at the tail end of his career with a completely different organization. And we saw Mahomes last night not be able to do it without really a consistent a favorable game plan or blocking.
Yeah. All the things that
it's very quick we're very dismissive of Brady.
All the things that we thought would come up and bite Kansas City last year actually bit them last night. We'll have more Hurrdat Sports Radio coming up next. Welcome back, Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at the Pillar Exterior Stage. It's time for Bet On It, brought to you by Warhorse Sportsbook, the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets, whether it's in Lincoln or in Omaha at the casinos. Make sure you get over to Warhorse Sportsbook. No bets, no glory. So we're having this conversation about quarterbacks, right? And we do kind of forget about Rodgers in that discussion a little bit because he didn't win more. Mm-hmm. And regular season, he won quite a bit. But in terms of just pure throwers of the football, Jason Cole was right. He's about as good as it's ever been. Just pure throwers of the football. Now, there's all the other junk that goes along with Aaron Rodgers that at some point I have to hold that against him. Like, it wasn't as public until the last handful of years, but he's kind of seemed like a guy that's been difficult for most of his career. I don't know how much that matters, but when you have those good of numbers and that few of wins in terms of postseason success to back it up, like we're doing touchdown interception ratios in the break here, and Rodgers is off the charts. It's so his is so good, it's stupid. Nobody else is close. I think he might have the best in terms of like a large sample size of all time, because everybody else that I look at is Brady's second that I can find, and he's barely 3-1. Rodgers is 4.34 to 1 touchdowns and interceptions for his career. It's 503 to 116. For comparison, Peyton Manning, who I think is right up there, barely 2 to 1, 539 to 251. We consider that guy as good as they've ever been, right? Dan Marino, somebody brought up in the chat, not even 2 to 1. Joe Montana, not even 2 to 1.
Oh, that was probably me.
Well, QB Ace brought up Marino. He goes,
well, that's what I responded to, right? When
yeah.
I was like, at first blush, I'd take Rodgers.
Well, I would too. But also, I don't think anybody anymore puts Marino in that category for that reason. If Marino had 2 Super Bowls, we'd talk about him a lot differently. If Marino had 1 Super Bowl, we'd talk about him a lot differently. But he kind of gets lumped into this other category of, really good guys never won it. And that's a whole different type of dude.
Yeah. And I think he falls into some of the category of some of these other guys that didn't play with a lead. I mean, we know Dwight Stevenson, and that's about the only offensive lineman we could name for the Dolphins.
Yeah.
That, at least for me, I mean, I'm a nerd, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing most people can't name the one.
Okay, so let me ask you something.
Yeah.
So I give you Hurts, Prescott, Herbert, Allen.
Throw Lamar in there.
Aaron Rodgers still, Stroud, Stafford, Purdy maybe, Burrow, Allen, Mahomes.
Okay.
Versus, so you got to go Manning, Brady, Breeze, Rodgers, Roethlisberger, Rivers, and Warner?
Yeah, probably. For the early to mid 2000s.
Do I put Favre in there? Probably.
Maybe not in that same time period. He's on the tail end there, so maybe, but yeah, I guess.
So do you give Rodgers to the early 2000s or?
So I go mostly 2010s.
Okay.
Because he doesn't start.
So he goes with the second group.
Because he doesn't start till 08.
Okay, so he goes with the second group.
Yeah, I think so.
So Jason said something that was interesting. He said, this crop isn't as deep as that group.
I disagree.
It's not that cut and dry.
I would disagree. I think there's...
Because you know what I'm going off of? As I think of the early 2000s, I get it biased, but look at his numbers. See, I think Ben belongs in like the top 6 or 7.
Probably, yeah.
He's never talked about.
Yeah.
So how do we really feel about
that group?
Yeah.
And Rivers.
How do we really feel?
Rivers is a good example because that's kind of the realm that Dan Marino has to live in.
And who does Eli go with?
I think early group. He got drafted in what?
He just said it kind of so smooth, like, well, you didn't have to deal with the depth. And I was like, I don't know who I would really take.
02? What? I can't remember what year Eli got. But no, I think I would take the later group.
It's close.
So part of it is I like Burrow a lot.
Can I just say this one last time?
Yeah.
It's almost upsetting to me how dismissive we are of what he does.
Yeah, especially this year.
Even my man Jason was like,
Burrow's.
The dude's back touched grass 6, 7, 8 times a game. I don't care if he's throwing to
Jamar Chase. T. Higgins.
Well, and sometimes T. Higgins. Yeah. We just lump T. Higgins in like he plays all the time. But
my first blush, and I don't want to do recency bias here, but
Burrow got Boyd paid. Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, I tend to, because I think Josh Allen's really good.
I think Burrow's incredible.
I mean, Jalen Hurts is a guy I don't even like that much. Just won a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, you said he could win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to eat that one because I can't even. I'm thinking all last night. Just full disclosure. I'm thinking all last night about like ways I can pivot and be like, oh, that's a defensive Super Bowl win.
I wasn't going to hold your feet to the fire.
You heard me all year. I was like, oh, I'm going to pivot and say it's a Saquon Barkley thing. Yeah. Well, Barkley gets eaten yesterday, so I can't make a Saquon Barkley thing. I could make it about the defense, but Jalen Hurts, like,
There's only so much time in the show. I wasn't going to spend.
I missed on Jalen Hurts.
Whether Hurts could win a Super Bowl.
I just missed on it, and that's fine. Like, I just missed. But
he's been to 2 now.
He's been to 2. He's won the 1. You know, part of the reason I said no is because he's just the 3rd quarterback ever to lose their first Super Bowl appearance and then win one.
Leave it to my diehards Dolphins fan. Bless your heart. He should probably be a Hall of Famer, too.
Who?
No, he's not a Hall of Famer. He should. Yeah, he's.
Who?
Richmond Webb. Great player.
Like,
but CK is a diehard Dolphins guy.
There's, speaking of Dolphins, 3 quarterbacks ever to lose their first Super Bowl appearance and then win one later. Bob Greasy, John Elway, and now Jalen Hurts. That's it. That's the whole list. If you lose the first one, you pretty much don't win one.
Yeah.
And so that was part of my thinking with Jalen Hurts. But like, I don't have an answer. Like, I can't. He left me no pivot room, which I don't love, to pivot out and be like, it was a defense. And listen, I could probably pin it on the defense, but he played really well, and he did all the things that I wasn't sure if he was capable of doing. Because Kansas City kind of was like, hey, you're gonna have to throw it to beat us, and he did. And then he ran it too. But they made him make some throws, and he made the throws.
I'm just trying to figure out how careful we have to be. Because listening to Jason talk about Rodgers, I'm like, shoot, I kind of feel like, and I thought this, when I text, I don't know who else was on that text, maybe just you, but I was like, wow, are they really going to dangle Rodgers in front of the Steelers like this?
Oh, I think that was the whole group, yeah.
And I'm like, does Rodgers need to win? That's immediately what I thought. He can't just go somewhere and have a poopy season, because he still threw for 28 tutties this year.
Yeah, and he got roasted,
killed.
Yeah, because we thought he was terrible, and mostly it's because he was a terrible teammate. But
does he need to have a good season to not be Jim Kelly?
You know what his numbers were this year?
Does he need a good season to not be Jim Kelly?
He needs a good team season. Because he had a good individual season.
Because we gloss over Jim Kelly like he was a bum.
Yeah.
Jim Kelly was good.
He was. Aaron Rodgers had 3,900 yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 picks.
It's pretty good.
That's a good year.
It's really good.
You know whose numbers those are better than? Patrick Mahomes is this year. You know who won 5 games this year? Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
That's the difference. If he puts up those numbers again on a 5-12 team, we're going to crush him again. We will crush him again.
And you're never going to get another Jim Kelly. Quarterback that's going to lose 4 for one team, you're not going to get that anymore, because they're either going to get traded. There's something. Yeah, it's not going to happen again.
That's probably right.
You're probably not going to have a guy lose 4 again.
We don't even talk about Jim Kelly.
Yeah.
I don't know. Patrick Mahomes could lose 4.
No, not without winning one. Obviously,
but he's going to get there a bunch more times, and you got to think he's going to lose 1 or 2 more.
That I don't know.
Yeah, we can't guarantee that.
I don't know. It's proven to be pretty hard to do.
So Jim Kelly's really good, but if we're going to hold...
That's a good point. So the difference between QBA saying that Brady lost 3 is he was winning in between there.
Yeah.
They weren't consecutive.
And there were wins, right?
Yeah.
Kelly's go 0 for 4. That's a tough look. Real quick on some of the Super Bowl props. You won the pick of the game. You had Philly-eyed KC. Mahomes and Hurts both went over on their touchdown passes, 1.5. I crushed the rushing attempts.
Attaboy.
8.5. He ended up with 11. B. Edwards crushed the rushing yards. It was 42.5. Goes for 72. We had some good. We also got the over, which I'm sure B. Edwards was nervous about with about 7 minutes left at 40-6, and he's like, somebody kick a field goal. We had a pretty good day. Yeah. We had a pretty good day on the props.
And take Carolina on the road against Clemson.
They're getting 5.5.
Correct.
That's Bet on It, brought to you by War-Horse Sportsbook. Wrapping up the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We're kind of getting into
in the weeds.
In the weeds on this question that Jason Cole kind of innocuously presented to us of which generation of quarterbacks was better. And I think we may need to separate it out depending on how far we're going back on the first class, right? Because if we're going into the 90s, maybe we can have 2 classes. But if we're going 2000s, 2010s, then we have to separate out for the 2020s too. And
you have to decide who goes where.
Yeah, because Lamar, Mahomes, Burrow, Allen are more 2020s guys, where you've got Stafford, Rodgers,
tens.
Yeah, the tens guys, right? And then you've got this early, although Brady kind of branches both of those. He's
Rodgers is 2000,
mostly tens,
but mostly tens.
Yeah, he's mostly tens. Roethlisberger sort of straddles the O's and the tens.
I always like to go with, what do you do with those guys that are like 11, 12, 13?
Sure. Like
So like
upper half of the league, but not upper third or quarter.
Right. So the Vicks, the McNairs, the Romos,
McNabb,
like versus.
So who's that now?
I would say like
Purdy,
Tua, Goff.
You put Purdy in that group?
Yeah.
Is he top half?
Yeah.
Top half guy.
Purdy. Maybe Jordan Love.
Jordan Love, that's fair.
It seems like I would take these guys.
Currently?
Yeah.
I think so.
Like I would take Jordan Love over Romo.
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, I mean,
I would personally, but I'm not even a huge Jordan Love
You don't
guy.
even like. Yeah, I was just getting ready to say. I was like, what?
But mostly, part of my issue with Jordan Love is the contract. It's not Jordan Love, right? So I have to be able to separate those two things. But if I'm going, I mean, it's really hard to go whole career resumes versus current, right? For everybody but Mahomes, because Mahomes, his career resume, he could retire tomorrow and still be in the top handful.
So this is what drives me crazy, but it's not QB Ace's fault. He's like everybody else.
What do you say?
I don't know what this guy's got to do.
Who?
Who's the guy in the 90s that I always want to fight people over?
90s.
He's incredible. And he's yours.
Steve Young?
Yeah.
Oh, I love Steve Young. Steve Young's my guy.
Like,
Steve Young is my guy.
What?
There was a time in the 90s Steve Young was as good as anybody.
Although that 80s, so Aikman was 89.
Yeah.
So I may have to put Aikman in the 90s.
Yeah, Aikman's a 90s
I'm a
guy.
huge Warren Moon guy.
Yep. Although his numbers.
I know.
But I also have to. He didn't get here till he was 27.
Yeah. You talking about from the CFL?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had this conversation about him.
Puts him in like 85 though. I mean, those were 85, 86 were good years for Warren Moon.
Yeah.
We have this.
He didn't win double-digit games a lot either.
No, he lost a lot, and he threw the ball to the other team a lot. But
he's 2-to-1 guy
for his career.
I mean, pretty close.
You know who's almost a 1-to-1 guy? I don't think you like him very much.
Who?
Guy we just said, Troy Aikman.
Aikman is 1-to-1 almost?
165 to 141.
Oh boy.
165 to 141.
See, and I probably this hurts me. I probably like Aikman more than any non-Dallas fan. And that hurts me as a guy that hates Dallas. But I can be objective.
He had 3 seasons in his career with fewer than double-digit interceptions.
Man,
he threw the ball.
The quarterback here, it's tough.
It is tough, and you have to.
But you remember I told you it's like Jason's tough, right? Like you can't ask him dumb questions. He doesn't go along to get along.
Warren Moon's closer to 1-to-1 than you want him to be.
I know. Oh, I know.
291, 233.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big Warren Moon guy.
So I get that, but the numbers don't hold up great.
So the thing about it is I have to get into. Like, there's categories. Like, do I just want a pure passer of the ball?
Yeah.
Because statistically, like, Emmett doesn't fit my argument.
Right.
But stylistically, I could make that case every day that ends in Y. It's hard to argue with 18K.
Yeah.
Right?
It's also hard to argue with a guy that stayed healthy for 15 years at running back.
So, but I do know, like, I'll stand on it. I take Fred. I just pulled a guy.
Yeah, you like Fred Taylor aesthetically better than.
By the way, I went down the Marshall Faulk rabbit hole. I thought you may find this interesting.
Ooh, I love Marshall Faulk.
I know. You know, he got his start at San Diego State.
Did you see the TikTok?
No.
I watched a TikTok on him last night. So the reason he went to San Diego State was because he said the first team.
This part is well known. That's the only team that would recruit him to play running back.
Yeah, well, he said the first team that will give me a shot at running back, I'll go there. And then they go, yeah, you better be in the top 2 by the end of spring, otherwise you're moving to defense.
Mm-hmm.
And then his starter gets hurt in the first or second quarter.
Do you know why he got hurt?
Punt return.
Yep.
and Marshall Faulk goes for 389 and 7 touchdowns or something.
Very good.
Like that is, I watched the TikTok last night.
It's like, and we sleep on this, dude.
Marshall Faulk is incredible. I love Marshall
So do you know
Faulk.
the other greatest thing about that?
What's that?
San Diego State. So when he got there,
Yeah.
he was telling a story on, it's a documentary. They were asking him about SDSU and why he went there. You know how many running backs they had there when he got there?
He was number 7.
7.
Yeah.
Do you know how many backs they played at a time?
1.
1. Is a 1-back offense.
Yeah.
So this dude had to like jump guys.
Yeah. He goes, I got 1 or 2 just by learning the playbook faster.
Yeah, he said, I didn't play in the first quarter.
Yeah. And he played second quarter, third quarter, and half the fourth. They went for 389.
Yeah. I think that guy's pretty good.
Yeah, I love Marshall Faulk.
I'm a big Marshall guy.
I liked him even when he was at the Colts. I liked the,
Ooh. And he's a QB ace. We're going to take him at his word.
Who?
My man QB ace.
No, what
he said in order right now, he would take Mahomes, Lamar, Burrow, Allen.
I'm taking Burrow over Lamar. And maybe this is my I'm gonna put myself out there right now because maybe this is
I gotta think about
my inability to have forward vision. I've seen a lot of guys win Super Bowls playing like Joe Burrow. We have yet to see a guy playing like Lamar Jackson win a Super Bowl. In terms of you trust his legs a little bit more than you trust his arm.
Well, there's a guy that wore number 8.
Steve Young?
Yes.
But you trusted Steve Young's arm. You trusted him to throw the ball. He had a 36-12 touchdown interception ratio when that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a guy, I think 97. Off the top of my head, I don't know. But maybe 98. But like that's a guy where you trusted him to play catch. There's times I don't trust Lamar Jackson to just play catch. There's times I don't trust Josh Allen to just play catch. It's the thing we talked about in the AFC Championship game, right?
Yeah, I'm going Burrow too.
Where
I'm going Mahomes, Burrow.
Allen for me. I'm going Allen third.
I don't know. I love Allen.
That top 4 right there that he listed.
Yeah.
That at first glance looks better than the 80s one with Montana, Marino, Elway.
And Aikman. Or not Aikman, but
I'll say who's fourth in the 80s?
Moon.
Or Marino.
Yeah,
he said-
Moon, Marino.
Wait, so Montana, Marino,
Elway.
who's fourth?
Moon.
I wouldn't put Moon in the 80s
But
yet.
I'm just saying that 4 right there, the modern 4 looks
Boomer?
better than that 4.
Esiason, maybe?
Was he the fourth in the 80s, probably?
I don't mind the Esiason. That's
made a couple Super Bowls.
That's probably in the. That's fair.
He's got to be close.
That's fair.
Right? So I'm taking the top 4 now over that top 4 for sure. I don't know if I'm taking it over the 2000s top 4 because the 2000s top 4 is Brady, Manning, and then who do you want to put in the other 2000s?
Boy, like so, just strictly 2000s.
Probably Warner.
Warner's behind Roethlisberger.
Roethlisberger doesn't come in until 06. Are we counting Roethlisberger as 2000s or 10s?
Well, he won a Super Bowl in 5.
Or yeah, 05. So
Yeah, I think he's in the 2000s.
Okay, so we're counting the 03 class in the 2000s. So we're going
Breeze is 3.
Yeah, because Breeze is 01. So we're going Manning, Brady, Breeze, Roethlisberger.
Because you're giving Rodgers to the 10s?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that better than Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Jackson? That's the consensus top 4, right? It's hard because we have the resumes for the other guys, right?
It's hard because Brady and Manning carry so much of the load.
Yeah, they do. But if I take Mahomes out and I take Manning, Brady out, and then I go the next
I'm
4,
definitely taking the
current
4.
100%, right? Like Manning and Brady are carrying a lot of water in the 2000s.
Like what makes Warner any different than Herbert? The Super Bowl?
Yeah, probably. And I think we give him a lot of credit for
because if I had to just go pick a guy, I'm taking Herbert.
Yeah, probably.
And he's not even in the discussion because we say he doesn't win enough.
Well, he doesn't win enough. But
You're such a hater.
But I think Warner also gets credit for modern NFL offense.
The greatest show on turf that can't even get his wide receiver in the NFL?
In the Hall of Fame?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he got Isaac in. We're going to start campaigning for Oz Hakeem, too. Ricky Prohl.
Wow, no.
I'm just kidding. Torrey Holt
maybe Ricky Prohl is a Panther.
Torrey Holt deserves to be in. I'm just kidding. But I think Warner
that voter thing is interesting, the format. That
was a really good insight from him. But I do think Warner gets credit for the revolutionizing modern offense.
Yeah. I can't wait till tomorrow when we get your Big East Player of the Year.
My Big East Player of the Year? I think you know who that is. Jason Green. No, I'm
My man's going for 30 minutes a night.
My guy, Sam McKewon, he goes, Jason Green, Isaac Trout, back-to-back. I was like, my two favorite types of people. Miller North guys, type 1 diabetics. Let's go. That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We'll be back tomorrow. More Hurrdat Sports Radio.